Thanksgiving at my childhood home in suburban Denver. 23 family members gathered around 3 tables pushed together. My sister Emma clinked her wine glass, standing with theatrical confidence. "We voted, and you're not family anymore?" The room erupted in cheers and applause. My mother dabbed her eyes with relief. Even my teenage nephew whooped. I felt the folder's weight in my purse containing documents that would shatter their celebration. Setting down my fork, I laughed softly. "Then I guess you won't need this." 3 weeks earlier, everything had seemed normal in our family. That Tuesday afternoon, I stopped by my mother's house in Lakewood to drop off her arthritis medication. She'd been struggling with the new prescription schedule, and I'd volunteered to pick up her refills every month. The November air was crisp, carrying the scent of burning leaves from the neighbors' yards. Her car wasn't in the driveway, which struck me as odd. She'd mentioned staying home all week to prepare for Thanksgiving, but Emma's white Mercedes sat there gleaming in the afternoon sun. Several other vehicles lined the street. Jake's pickup truck, Aunt Dorothy's sedan, Uncle Carl's SUV, even Cousin Stephanie's Honda that rarely left Boulder. Through the living room window, I could see them all gathered inside. The curtains were partially drawn, but the gap revealed enough. Emma stood at the front of the room like a professor gesturing at the television screen. My brother Jake sat on the couch, his wife Sarah beside him, both nodding seriously. My mother occupied her favorite armchair tissues in hand. I moved closer to the window, careful to stay hidden behind the rose bushes I'd helped my mother plant 10 years ago. The TV displayed a PowerPoint presentation. My stomach dropped when I saw my own face on the screen, a photo from last Christmas. Bold red letters underneath spelled out "problem" in what looked like 72-point font. Emma clicked to the next slide. Financial charts appeared, though I couldn't make out the details from my position. She pointed at different sections, her mouth moving rapidly. My aunts and uncles leaned forward, studying whatever fabrication she was presenting. Even my cousin's teenage kids were there, sitting cross-legged on the floor, absorbing every word. My hands trembled as I backed away from the window. The medication bag crinkled in my grip, suddenly feeling heavier than lead. I made it to my car without anyone noticing, sliding behind the wheel, with my heart hammering against my ribs. The drive home blurred past. 20 minutes of suburban streets and questioning everything I thought I knew about my family. Emma and I had our differences, sure. She was 5 years older, always the golden child who could do no wrong. I was the quiet one who spent Friday nights reading to Grandma instead of attending her book club parties. But this level of orchestrated betrayal— That evening, my phone rang with perfect normalcy. My mother called to discuss her arthritis, complaining about the changing weather. She mentioned nothing about the meeting. Emma texted about Thanksgiving menu planning, asking if I could bring my famous sweet potato casserole. Jake sent a funny video in our family group chat. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't seen them with my own eyes, I'd never have suspected the conspiracy brewing beneath their pleasant messages. The betrayal cut deeper than any direct confrontation could have achieved. They were maintaining a facade while planning my exile. I started making discreet phone calls to family friends. Mrs. Henderson from next door mentioned seeing quite a gathering at my mother's house. Tom from the hardware store said Jake had been asking about changing locks recently. Each conversation added another piece to a puzzle I didn't want to complete. My investigation led me to coffee with Patricia Morgan, who worked at the bank where Grandma had kept her accounts. We'd known each other since high school. "Raquel, I shouldn't tell you this," she said, glancing around the quiet cafe. "But your sister's been in several times lately asking questions about your grandmother's estate. She seemed very interested in who had access to what." The picture was becoming clearer. Emma was building a case against me, painting me as some kind of threat to the family's financial security. But why? What had triggered this sudden need to cast me out? I'd been nothing but supportive, spending every free moment caring for Grandma in her final years, while Emma made excuses about her busy schedule. By the end of that week, I'd gathered enough information to understand the scope of their plotting. Multiple family members had been contacted, stories had been spun, and evidence had been manufactured. The meeting I'd witnessed was apparently the second of 3 planned sessions to address the Raquel problem. I sat in my small apartment, looking at photos of family gatherings spanning decades. Every smile now seemed suspect. Every happy memory felt tainted. They were planning to ambush me at Thanksgiving, the one holiday that had always been sacred in our family. The cruelty of the timing wasn't lost on me. Emma knew exactly what she was doing. The next morning, I decided to be proactive rather than wait for their planned ambush. Something about Patricia Morgan's comment regarding Emma's interest in Grandma's estate nagged at me. I called attorney Patricia Hartman, who had handled my grandmother's legal affairs for over 30 years. "Raquel, thank goodness you called." Patricia's voice carried an urgency that immediately set me on edge. "I've been trying to reach you for 2 weeks. Your phone seemed to be going straight to voicemail." That was news to me. My phone had been working fine. "I haven't received any messages from you, Patricia. What's going on?" "Can you come to my office this afternoon? There are matters regarding your grandmother's estate that require your immediate attention." I arrived at the law offices of Hartman and Associates at 2 o'clock sharp. The building stood in downtown Denver, a restored Victorian that Patricia had converted into Colorado's most respected estate planning firm. Her assistant led me to the familiar conference room where I'd accompanied Grandma many times over the years. Patricia entered carrying a thick manila file that she placed carefully on the mahogany table. Her expression was grave as she adjusted her reading glasses. "Raquel, what I'm about to share with you will be difficult to hear. Your grandmother amended her will 6 months before her passing. She was very specific about her concerns and her reasons for making these changes." My hands felt cold as she opened the file. I thought the will was straightforward. Everything divided equally among her children and grandchildren. "That was the original plan," Patricia confirmed. "But your grandmother discovered some deeply troubling information that prompted her to protect certain assets. She created a separate trust, naming you as the sole beneficiary and executor." The documents she spread before me were extensive. Legal language filled page after page, but certain phrases jumped out: sole beneficiary, controlling interest, protection from family interference. My eyes struggled to process what I was reading. "I don't understand. Why would Grandma do this, and why wasn't I told?" Patricia pulled out a sealed envelope with my name, written in Grandma's shaky handwriting. "She insisted this be given to you only when you came to inquire about the estate, or if certain conditions were met. Given what you've told me about recent family dynamics, I believe we've reached that point." I opened the letter with trembling fingers. Grandma's words flowed across the page in her distinctive script. "My dearest Raquel, if you're reading this, then my fears have come to pass. I've watched Emma manipulate our family for years, but these last months have revealed the true extent of her deception. She's been stealing from me, sweetheart. Not just money, but peace of mind, family harmony, and trust. The private investigator I hired has documented everything. You were the only one who visited me without agenda, who loved me without calculation. The others will turn against you when they learn what I've done. But you must be strong. In the safe deposit box, you'll find everything you need to protect yourself and expose the truth. All my love, Grandma Rose." Tears blurred my vision. Patricia handed me a tissue before continuing. "The trust contains more than just monetary assets, Raquel. Your grandmother transferred controlling interest in the family's commercial properties to you. The strip mall on Colorado Boulevard, the apartment complex in Aurora, and the office building downtown. Together, they generate substantial monthly income." My mind reeled. Those properties were worth millions. The family had always assumed they'd be sold and divided equally. Emma's been telling everyone I was trying to manipulate Grandma into changing her will. "Projection," Patricia said simply. Your grandmother hired a private investigator named James Morrison 6 months before she passed. Would you like to see his report? The investigator's findings read like a crime thriller. Page after page of documented evidence showing Emma's systematic theft from our grandmother's accounts. Bank statements highlighted suspicious transfers. Photographs showed Emma at luxury resorts in Cabo Monaco and Dubai during times she'd claimed to be too broke to contribute to Grandma's care. Credit card statements revealed shopping sprees at Neiman Marcus and Saks, while she told the family she was struggling financially. The most damaging section detailed Emma's manipulation tactics. She'd been showing Grandma falsified documents suggesting I was planning to put her in a state-run facility. She'd created fake email exchanges where I supposedly discussed selling Grandma's house and keeping the profits. Meanwhile, she'd been transferring thousands from Grandma's accounts to offshore holdings in the Cayman Islands. How did she think she'd get away with this? I asked, stunned by the scope of the deception. According to the investigator's notes, she planned to contest any will that didn't favor her significantly. She'd been building a case that your grandmother wasn't mentally competent and that you'd exercised undue influence. The family meeting you witnessed was likely part of establishing a witness pool who would support her claims. Patricia pulled out another set of documents. There's more. Your grandmother discovered Emma had been using her power of attorney to attempt property transfers. She tried to sell the commercial buildings to a shell company she controlled. The only reason it failed was because the buyer's attorney found discrepancies in the signatures. I studied the forged documents. Emma had gotten sloppy, but the attempt was clear. She'd been trying to liquidate Grandma's assets before anyone could stop her. This is criminal fraud. Yes, it is. Your grandmother documented everything meticulously. She also recorded several conversations with Emma where she explicitly stated she didn't want to sell the properties. The recordings are in the safe deposit box, along with signed affidavits from the nursing staff about Emma's behavior during visits. The full picture was staggering. While I'd been reading to Grandma, bringing her favorite foods, and managing her medications, Emma had been systematically robbing her. The investigator had tracked over $300,000 in stolen funds, not counting the attempted property fraud. What should I do? I asked, feeling the weight of responsibility Grandma had placed on my shoulders. Patricia leaned back in her chair, choosing her words carefully. Your grandmother hoped the family would see reason when presented with the truth. She wanted to give them one chance to acknowledge what Emma had done and make amends. If they chose to side with Emma despite the evidence, she gestured to another document. There are provisions for pursuing criminal charges, elder abuse, fraud, forgery. Emma could face serious prison time. I left the law office with copies of everything and a key to the safe deposit box. The folder in my hands contained enough evidence to destroy Emma's carefully constructed narrative, but it also held the power to tear our family apart completely. As I sat in my car in the parking garage, I realized Grandma had given me more than an inheritance. She'd given me the truth, and with it the burden of deciding what to do with it. That evening, I sat at my dining table surrounded by evidence that painted my sister as someone I'd never truly known. The private investigator's report demanded careful study, each page revealing another layer of deception. James Morrison had been thorough, his documentation spanning 5 years of Emma's activities. The report began with financial forensics. Emma had started small, taking cash from Grandma's wallet during visits, always amounts small enough to blame on forgetfulness. $50 here, $100 there. The investigator had interviewed the housekeeper, Maria, who'd noticed the pattern, but felt it wasn't her place to speak up. By year 2, Emma had graduated to check fraud. She'd written checks to herself for reimbursement of expenses that never existed, grocery runs that never happened, medical equipment never purchased, pharmacy trips fabricated from thin air. The paper trail showed she'd stolen over $40,000 this way before moving to bigger schemes. The photographs in the report told their own story. Page after page showed Emma living a life of luxury while claiming poverty to our family. There she was boarding a private jet to Aspen timestamp, showing it was the same week she'd told us she couldn't afford to chip in for Grandma's new wheelchair. Another photo captured her at a high-stakes poker game in Vegas, betting thousands while texting the family that she was working overtime to make ends meet. Morrison had interviewed dozens of people in building his case. The nurses at Grandma's care facility had particularly damning testimony. Linda, the head nurse, had provided a sworn statement that made my blood run cold. Emma would visit on the first of each month always when she knew Raquel wouldn't be there. She'd bring paperwork for Rose to sign, insisting it was routine medical forms. Rose would be confused, often asking for Raquel, but Emma would say her sister was too busy to care. I watched her pressure Rose when she was heavily medicated after procedures. Once Rose started crying, saying, "Emma scares me," but Emma dismissed it as dementia talking. We started documenting these visits with timestamps and notes. Rose was always agitated for days afterward. Another nurse, Jennifer, had witnessed Emma going through Grandma's personal belongings, during visits pocketing jewelry and claiming Grandma had given it to her. The facility's security footage confirmed these thefts, though the quality wasn't clear enough for prosecution without supporting evidence. The investigation revealed Emma's manipulation extended far beyond money. She'd been systematically poisoning the family against me for years. Morrison had somehow obtained Emma's emails to various family members, each crafted to plant seeds of doubt about my character and motives. To my mother, she wrote, "I'm worried about Raquel's obsession with Grandma. It's not healthy how she hovers. I caught her going through Grandma's financial papers last week. We need to watch her carefully." To Uncle Carl, Raquel mentioned something about Grandma changing her will. She seemed very interested in the property values. I'm concerned she's taking advantage of Grandma's condition. To Cousin Stephanie, I overheard Raquel on the phone with some lawyer. She was asking about power of attorney and inheritance laws. We can't let her manipulate Grandma. Each email was perfectly crafted to seem concerned rather than accusatory. Emma positioned herself as the protective granddaughter, looking out for everyone's interests while painting me as calculating and greedy. The irony would have been laughable if it weren't so devastating. The investigator had also uncovered Emma's previous pattern of behavior. This wasn't her first time targeting a vulnerable relative. In college, she'd managed to convince her roommate's wealthy grandmother to loan her $20,000 for a business venture that never existed. The roommate, Tracy Chen, had provided a statement about how Emma had ingratiated herself with the elderly woman, eventually causing a rift between Tracy and her grandmother that never healed before the woman's death. Morrison had tracked down 3 other families with similar stories. Emma would identify vulnerable elderly people with assets, charm her way into their lives, and systematically drain their resources while turning their families against each other. She'd been doing this for over 15 years, always managing to avoid criminal charges by keeping the thefts just below felony level or ensuring the victims were too embarrassed or confused to pursue legal action. The section on Emma's offshore accounts was particularly revealing. She'd been moving money through a complex web of shell companies with names like Sunshine Senior Services and Compassionate Care Solutions. The investigator had traced over $300,000 to accounts in the Cayman Islands and Belize. This wasn't impulsive theft. This was a sophisticated criminal enterprise. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery was the medical aspect. Emma had been slipping mild sedatives into Grandma's tea during visits, making her more compliant and confused. The toxicology reports from Grandma's regular blood work showed elevated levels of benzodiazepine on days following Emma's visits. Not enough to cause serious harm, but sufficient to make an elderly woman foggy and suggestible. Morrison's report included a psychological profile prepared by a forensic psychiatrist who'd reviewed the evidence. The terms narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial behavior patterns appeared frequently. The psychiatrist noted that Emma displayed classic signs of a financial predator who targeted family members because they were less likely to pursue criminal charges. As I reached the final pages of the report, I found Morrison's summary recommendations. He advised immediate action to protect remaining assets, suggested obtaining restraining orders if necessary, and strongly recommended pursuing criminal charges to prevent Emma from victimizing others. His closing words were stark. Emma Richardson represents a clear and present danger to vulnerable individuals. Her escalating behavior patterns suggest she will not stop until forced to do so by legal intervention. I set down the report and walked to my window, looking out at the Denver skyline. The city lights twinkled in the darkness, each one representing a life, a story, a family. How many other Emmas were out there preying on the elderly, turning families against each other for financial gain? How many other Raquels were being painted as villains while the real criminals walked free? The evidence was overwhelming, but I knew that wouldn't make the coming confrontation any easier. Emma had spent years preparing the family to see me as the enemy. Even with all this proof, would they believe the truth? Or would they see it as an elaborate scheme I'd concocted to steal the inheritance? I returned to the table and began organizing the evidence into a comprehensive package. If Emma wanted to cast me out of the family, she'd chosen the wrong target. Grandma had seen through her facade and armed me with the truth. The question now was whether I had the strength to use it. 2 days before Thanksgiving, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. My mother's name appeared on the screen, and something in my gut told me this was it. The confrontation Emma had been orchestrating was about to begin. "Raquel, we need to discuss your behavior." My mother's voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. "Come over, now." "Mom, what's this about? I'm getting ready for work." "This is more important than work. Be here in an hour." The line went dead. I dressed carefully, choosing a conservative blazer and slacks. Professional, put together, nothing that could be construed as threatening or unstable. The drive to my childhood home felt like heading to an execution. Every red light gave me time to second-guess my decision to go without the evidence folder. I wanted to see what they'd manufactured before revealing what I knew. The house looked different somehow, as if the warm childhood memories had been drained from its walls. Multiple cars filled the driveway and street. They'd assembled the full jury for my trial. I parked and walked to the front door, each step measured and calm despite my racing pulse. Jake answered before I could knock. My younger brother, who I'd helped with homework and taught to drive, looked at me like I was a stranger. "They're waiting in the living room," he said, stepping aside without meeting my eyes. The furniture had been rearranged into what could only be described as an intervention setup. A single chair sat in the center of the room, facing a semicircle of family members. Emma occupied the power position, directly across from the hot seat, my mother at her right hand. Jake took his place beside his wife, Sarah. My aunts Dorothy and Patricia flanked them, while Uncle Carl sat slightly apart, his accountant's mind clearly uncomfortable with the theatrical setup. "Hey, sit down, Raquel," Emma commanded, gesturing to the isolated chair. I remained standing. "I'll stand, thanks. What's this about?" Emma's face twisted into an expression of wounded disappointment. "Even now you're defiant. This is exactly what we need to discuss. Your inability to respect family." My inability to respect family. I kept my voice level curious to see how far she'd take this performance. My mother pulled out a manila folder, not unlike the one sitting in my car with actual evidence. "Emma has shown us everything, Raquel. The emails where you threatened to destroy the family if you didn't get Grandma's money. The recordings of you pressuring her to change her will. We know what you've been doing." Emma produced printed emails, spreading them across the coffee table with the reverence of a prosecutor presenting state's evidence. I stepped forward to examine them, noting immediately that the formatting was wrong. The font wasn't what Gmail used. The timestamps didn't match standard email protocols, Amateur forgeries, but convincing enough for an audience primed to believe them. Reread this one, Emma urged, pointing to a particularly vicious message. Tell me that doesn't sound like someone consumed by greed. The email was dated 3 months ago, supposedly from my account to a lawyer I'd never heard of. I don't care what it takes. That money is mine. I've wasted years taking care of that old woman, and I deserve compensation. If my family tries to stop me, I'll reveal secrets that will destroy them all. Emma thinks she's so smart, but I have dirt on everyone. They'll pay me or they'll pay the price. I almost laughed at how cartoonishly villainous it sounded. You think I wrote this? This sounds like a bad movie villain, not me. Of course you deny it, Sarah chimed in, speaking for the first time. Emma warned us you'd try to gaslight us. The word gaslight from Sarah's mouth told me everything. Emma had been coaching them, teaching them terms to use, preparing them for my supposed manipulation tactics. The irony was suffocating. I've tried protecting you, Emma said, tears streaming down her face with practiced precision. Despite everything, you're my sister. I told them we should handle this privately, but your escalating behavior left us no choice. She produced more documents, bank statements with highlighted withdrawals, photos of me at Grandma's house, with ominous captions suggesting theft, even a psychological evaluation, claiming I showed signs of severe personality disorders. The evaluation was signed by a Dr. Marcus Webb, whose online presence I later discovered consisted of a single badly designed website. You've been spreading lies about Emma, Aunt Dorothy accused, telling people she stole from Mother. How could you be so cruel? She showed us the emails where you threatened her children if she exposed you, Aunt Patricia added. Threatening children? Raquel, what's happened to you? Jake's kids. Emma had dragged them into this fabrication knowing it would be a bridge too far for any decent person to cross. The manipulation was masterful in its cruelty. I need to see these supposed threats, I said calmly, because I've never threatened anyone, especially not children. Emma pulled out another paper with the theatrical timing of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. The supposed threat was so over the top it belonged in a soap opera. Tell anyone about my plans, and your kids will learn what their mother really is. I know about Jake's arrests. I know about Sarah's affair. Cross me, and everyone will know everything. Jake's arrest. I turned to my brother. What arrests and Sarah's affair? What is any of this? Jake's face flushed. Don't pretend you don't know. Emma showed us the private investigator's report you commissioned on the whole family. The projection was breathtaking. Emma had hired an investigator to manufacture dirt on the family and was now claiming I'd done it. Every crime she'd committed was being attributed to me. We're giving you a choice. Emma continued, pulling out a legal document. Sign this agreeing to relinquish any claim to Grandma's estate and limiting your contact with the family, or we'll be forced to pursue legal action. We have enough evidence to get a restraining order, maybe even press charges for elder abuse. I scanned the document. It was more comprehensive than a simple waiver. It included clauses about defamation agreements, not to contact family members without permission and acknowledgement of past harmful behaviors. Signing it would be admitting to crimes I hadn't committed. You want me to sign away my family relationships based on forged emails and fake documents? They're not fake. Emma's mask slipped slightly, real anger flashing through. Stop lying, just once take responsibility. My mother, who'd been silent since her initial accusations, finally spoke. Raquel, please, just sign it. We can work on rebuilding trust later, but Emma's shown us too much evidence to ignore. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Thanksgiving is for family, Emma said, regaining her composure. And if you can't admit your wrongs and make amends, then you're no longer welcome at our table. We took a vote. It was unanimous. You voted to kick me out of the family. I looked at each face, seeing varying degrees of discomfort, but no dissent. Based on Emma's word and some printed emails, based on evidence, Uncle Carl corrected, though he seemed the least certain. The financial irregularities alone. What financial irregularities? I pressed. Did any of you verify these bank statements? Check if these emails came from real servers? Confirm the psychologist exists? I see, Emma pointed at me triumphantly. She's trying to make us doubt clear evidence. This is exactly what the psychology report said she'd do. Classic manipulation tactics. The circular logic was impressive. By questioning the evidence, I was proving the evidence true. Emma had created a perfect trap where defense became admission of guilt. I'm not signing anything, I said firmly, and I'll be at Thanksgiving dinner as I have been for 32 years. If you want to believe Emma's lies over a lifetime of knowing me, that's your choice. But I won't confess to crimes I didn't commit. Then you're not welcome, Emma declared. We've already changed the locks at Mom's house. Security will be present if you try to crash our family gathering. Security at Thanksgiving. The absurdity would have been funny if it weren't so painful. I looked at my mother one last time. Mom, you raised me. You know who I am. Please think about what you're doing. She turned away, unable to meet my eyes. The evidence is overwhelming, Raquel. I'm sorry it's come to this. I left without another word, walking past family members who'd known me since birth and now looked at me like a criminal. In the car, I allowed myself 5 minutes to cry. For the family I was losing, for the grandmother who'd seen this coming, for the childhood memories now forever tainted. Then I dried my eyes and drove home. They'd made their choice. On Thanksgiving, they'd learned the cost of choosing Emma's lies over truth. The folder in my trunk held Emma's destruction, and I'd place it on their table with the same theatrical flair she'd used to destroy me. They wanted to vote me out of the family. They were about to discover they'd voted to protect a criminal instead. Thanksgiving morning arrived with an unusual warmth for late November in Denver. The sun rose over the mountains, casting golden light through my apartment windows as I methodically prepared for what would likely be the last family gathering I'd ever attend. The kitchen counter held 2 items of equal importance, my famous sweet potato casserole and the comprehensive folder that would expose Emma's crimes. I'd spent the previous day organizing every piece of evidence into a damning narrative that even the most skeptical family member couldn't dismiss. Patricia Hartman had helped me prepare additional documentation, including notarized copies of Grandma's trust documents and authenticated bank records. Each section was labeled with tabs for easy reference: financial theft, forged documents, elder abuse, property fraud, and pattern of deception. The private investigator Morrison had uncovered one final piece of information that changed everything. While reviewing property records for the commercial buildings, he discovered Emma had already attempted to sell them. 6 weeks ago, she'd approached Meridian Development Group with forged deeds claiming power of attorney over Grandma's estate. The deal had fallen through only because their due diligence team found discrepancies in the paperwork. Robert Meridian himself had provided a sworn affidavit about the attempted transaction. Emma had presented herself as a sole heir, claiming I was mentally unstable, and the family had agreed to the sale to pay for my psychiatric treatment. The proposed sale price was 40% below market value, a quick cash deal that would have netted Emma over $2 million. I added Meridian's statement to the folder along with emails between Emma and the development company that showed she'd been planning this for months. She'd even gone so far as to create fake family meeting minutes, complete with forged signatures authorizing the sale. Linda, the nurse from Grandma's care facility, had agreed to accompany me to dinner if needed. Her witnessed accounts of Emma's behavior were crucial, and she'd saved something that would devastate Emma's carefully crafted image. 3 months before Grandma died, Linda had used her phone to record a conversation where Emma pressured Grandma to sign documents while heavily medicated after a fall. The recording was heartbreaking. Grandma's voice confused and frightened, asking for me. Emma's response cold and manipulative, telling her I was too busy to care, that only Emma could protect her assets. The sound of papers rustling, Emma guiding Grandma's hand to sign, Grandma crying softly, saying she wanted to wait for me. Emma's sharp response that I couldn't be trusted. I transferred the audio file to a USB drive and added it to the folder. If the family wanted to ignore written evidence, perhaps hearing Grandma's distress would penetrate their denial. My phone buzzed with texts from various family members throughout the morning. Jake sent a message warning me not to come, saying it would only cause pain for everyone. Sarah texted that she was sorry things had come to this, but hoped I'd get help. Even young cousin Michael, who'd always looked up to me, sent a message saying he didn't understand why I'd become so greedy, but hoped I'd change. Emma had poisoned them all, but poison could be purged with truth even if the medicine was bitter. I dressed carefully in the burgundy dress Grandma had given me for my 30th birthday. She'd said it made me look like a warrior princess, strong and elegant. I needed both qualities today. The pearl necklace she'd left specifically to me completed the outfit, a visible reminder of who had truly loved and trusted me. Patricia Hartman called as I was loading everything into my car. Raquel, I want you to know that if things go badly, we can file criminal charges immediately. I've already prepared the paperwork. Elder abuse, fraud, forgery. Emma's looking at serious prison time. I know, I replied, carefully placing the casserole in the back seat. But I need to give them one chance to see the truth. Grandma would want that. Your grandmother would want you protected, Patricia countered gently. Don't let family loyalty blind you to self-preservation. Emma's dangerous and cornered criminals do desperate things. Her warning echoed in my mind as I drove toward my childhood home. The streets were quiet, most families already gathered around their tables. I'd timed my arrival for exactly 2 o'clock, after they'd started eating, but before the main course was served. Maximum impact, minimal chance for Emma to intercept me at the door. As I pulled onto my mother's street, I noticed an unfamiliar van parked outside. Security, as Emma had threatened. She'd actually hired security for a family dinner. The lengths she'd gone to protect her lies would have been impressive if they weren't so pathetic. I parked down the block and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. The folder beside me contained enough evidence to destroy Emma completely. But it would also shatter my family's illusions, force them to confront their own gullibility and complicity. There would be no going back after this. My phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. Shy Raquel, I know you're thinking of coming here. Please don't. Not for me, but for Mom. She's finally having a peaceful holiday without the drama you create. The papers you need to sign have been sent to your apartment. Sign them and mail them back, and we can discuss rebuilding our relationship in the future. But if you show up here, if you try to ruin this day with more of your lies, I'll have no choice but to involve the police. The family has statements about your threats. Don't test me. The audacity of her threat almost made me laugh. She'd stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars, attempted property fraud, abused our grandmother, and now she was threatening me with police action based on her own forgeries. The projection had reached astronomical levels. I grabbed both the casserole and the folder, balancing them carefully as I walked toward the house. The security guard, a bored-looking man in an ill-fitting uniform, stood by the front door. He straightened as I approached. Sorry, miss, I have a list. What's your name? Raquel, I said, simply shifting the casserole to one arm. He checked his clipboard. Yeah, you're on the exclusion list. I can't let you in. I'm just dropping off this casserole, I said, keeping my voice pleasant. It's my grandmother's recipe. They're expecting it. You can walk me in and right back out if needed. He hesitated. The situation was clearly not what he'd expected when taking a holiday security job. I'd need to check with the client. Of course, tell Emma her sister is here with the sweet potato casserole she requested for dinner. The guard looked even more confused, but knocked on the door. Jake answered, his face cycling through surprise, anxiety, and resignation when he saw me. Raquel, you can't be here. I brought the casserole Emma asked for, I said loudly enough for my voice to carry inside, and something else the family needs to see. You can either let me in for 5 minutes or I can stand on the lawn and shout about Emma's theft until the neighbors call the real police. Your choice. Jake glanced back inside, then at the security guard who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. 5 minutes, Jake said finally. Give us 5 minutes to hear her out, he told the guard. I walked into my childhood home for possibly the last time. The familiar sense of turkey stuffing and pumpkin pie filled the air. From the dining room, I could hear the muted conversation of 23 family members enjoying their Thanksgiving dinner. They had no idea their world was about to shatter. The dining room fell silent as I entered. Emma stood immediately, her face flushing with rage. Get out! You were told not to come. I set the casserole on the sideboard with deliberate calm. I was told a lot of things, that I threatened children, that I stole from Grandma, that I forged documents. All lies, Emma, every single one. Security, Emma shouted, is about to hear some very interesting evidence of elder abuse and fraud if you want to make this public. I finished. My mother looked between us, confusion replacing certainty. Raquel, please, just leave. You're making everything worse. No, Mom. Emma's made everything worse. I'm just shining light on it. I pulled out the folder, holding it like a shield. 3 weeks ago, you all held a meeting about me. You viewed Emma's evidence and voted to remove me from the family. Today, I'm giving you the chance to see real evidence. Not forged emails or fake psychological evaluations, but actual documents, bank records, recordings, and witness statements. This is ridiculous, Emma snarled, but I caught the flash of panic in her eyes. She's gonna show you fabricated documents and claim mine are fake. This is exactly what narcissists do. They project their crimes onto others. Then you should have no problem with the family reviewing my evidence, I said smoothly. After all, if it's all fake, it should be easy to disprove. Unless you're afraid of what they'll find. Uncle Carl, ever the analytical mind, spoke up. I think we should look at whatever Raquel's brought. We made our decision based on evidence. If there's contrary evidence, we owe it to family unity to review it. Oh, family unity. Emma laughed harshly. She's trying to destroy our family. No, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. You already did that. I'm trying to save what's left. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. Grandma's handwritten letter. Before we look at bank statements and legal documents, I think you should hear from Grandma herself, in her own words, written 6 months before she died. My hands remained steady as I prepared to read the letter that would begin Emma's destruction. Around the table, family members leaned forward despite themselves. Even the security guard hovering uncertainly in the doorway seemed captivated by the drama unfolding. It's just my dearest family, I began reading Grandma's words aloud. If Raquel is reading this to you, then I am gone and Emma's deception has reached its terrible conclusion. If Raquel is reading this to you, then I am gone, and Emma's deception has reached its terrible conclusion. By now, she has likely convinced you that Raquel is a threat, that she manipulated me, that she cannot be trusted. Every word is a lie, and I have proof. Emma lunged forward, trying to snatch the letter from my hands. That's fake. She's forging Grandma's handwriting. Jake caught Emma's arm, holding her back. Let her finish reading, Em. If it's fake, we'll be able to tell. I continued Grandma's words, filling the dining room. Emma has been stealing from me for years. It started small. Cash from my purse checks for groceries that were never purchased. But her greed grew. She accessed my bank accounts, transferred money to offshore holdings, and even attempted to sell my properties using forged documents. I have hired a private investigator who documented everything. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. This is insane, Emma's voice pitched higher. Mom, tell them you know I would never... Wait, quiet! Uncle Carl commanded, his accountant's instincts clearly triggered. Raquel, continue. I changed my will not out of favoritism, but out of necessity. Emma has stolen over $300,000 from me. She drugged me to make me compliant during her visits, pressured me to sign documents while I was medicated, and told me lies about Raquel to keep me from seeking help. The trust I created protects the family assets from Emma's theft and ensures they go to someone who visited me out of love, not greed. Tears ran down my mother's face as she recognized Grandma's distinctive phrasing, her way of structuring sentences. This wasn't something that could be faked. Oh, I know this is painful to hear. Emma is charming and convincing. She fooled me for years before I discovered the truth. But I could not go to my grave knowing she would destroy our family's legacy and blame Raquel for her crimes. The evidence is with Patricia Hartman. Bank records, recordings, witness statements. Everything you need to see the truth. Please don't let my granddaughter suffer for exposing her sister's crimes. Protect Raquel as she protected me. All my love, Rose. Silence descended like a heavy blanket. Emma's face had gone from red to white, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Now, I said, pulling out the next set of documents, let me show you what Emma didn't want you to see. I spread the bank statements across the table, avoiding the cranberry sauce. These are Grandma's actual bank records authenticated by Wells Fargo. Every highlighted transaction is money Emma stole. Look at the dates. They correspond with times Emma told us she couldn't afford to help with Grandma's care. My mother picked up one statement with shaking hands. This withdrawal for $15,000. Emma, you said you needed that for emergency car repairs. And this one? Aunt Dorothy pointed to another line. $30,000 for your daughter's medical procedure. You said insurance wouldn't cover it. Emma attempted damage control. Those were loans. Grandma agreed to help me. Then why? I pulled out another document. Did you transfer them to an account in the Cayman Islands under the name Sunshine Senior Services LLC? Uncle Carl grabbed that paper, his expertise immediately recognizing the implications. This is a shell company. Emma, this is textbook money laundering. It's not what it looks like. Really? I produced the private investigator's photos, then explained these pictures of you in Monaco timestamps showing the exact dates you claimed to be working double shifts to pay for Grandma's medications. The photos circulated around the table. Emma on a yacht, Emma at a casino, Emma shopping in boutiques that cost more per item than most people's monthly salary. Each image dated, each corresponding to a family hardship she'd claimed prevented her from contributing. The investigator also interviewed the nurses at Grandma's care facility. I continued pulling out Linda's affidavit. They documented Emma's visits always on the first of the month, always when she knew I wouldn't be there. They watched her pressure Grandma to sign documents, saw her go through Grandma's jewelry, witnessed her drugging Grandma's tea. Drugging, Sarah gasped. That's a serious accusation. And a true one. I pulled out the toxicology reports. Grandma's blood work shows elevated levels of benzodiazepine after each of Emma's visits. Not enough to cause serious harm, but sufficient to make an elderly woman confused and compliant. Emma's husband Marcus had been silent until now, but something shifted in his expression. The tea, he said slowly. Emma always made special tea for your grandmother, said it was an herbal blend for arthritis. Marcus, don't you dare. And those vitamins you've been giving your mother, he continued looking at my mom, the special ones you order online? My mother's hand flew to her mouth. The vitamins that make me feel so relaxed. I pulled out the USB drive. I think you all need to hear this. It's a recording from 3 months before Grandma died. I plugged it into my phone and let it play through the Bluetooth speaker Jake had set up for dinner music. Grandma's voice, frightened and confused, filled the room. Where's Raquel? I want Raquel. Raquel doesn't care about you, Grandma. I'm the one who's here. Now sign this paper. I don't understand what it is. Can we wait for Raquel? No, just sign it. Here, let me guide your hand. The sound of rustling papers, then Grandma crying, Emma scares me. Please get Raquel. Shut up and sign. I stopped the recording as several family members gasped. My mother sobbed openly. Even teenage cousin Michael looked horrified. But wait, I said, pulling out more documents. There's more. Emma didn't just steal money. She tried to steal everything. I laid out the property fraud evidence. The attempted sale to Meridian's development group, the forged deeds, the fake family meeting, minutes with everyone's signatures, copied from old Christmas cards. She tried to sell the buildings. Uncle Carl studied the documents with growing alarm. For 40% below market value. That's millions of dollars she tried to steal. Robert Meridian's affidavit was passed around each family member, reading how Emma had portrayed me as mentally ill, claiming the family needed quick cash from my treatment. This is why she was so eager to have us vote you out, Aunt Patricia said slowly. She needed us to actually agree you were unstable, so her lies would seem true. The folder Emma showed us? Jake said, pulling out his phone. The emails, the psychological evaluation. If she forged these property documents. Everything she showed you was fabricated, I confirmed, just like she fabricated evidence against me. Every crime she accused me of committing, she had done herself. Emma's carefully constructed house of cards was collapsing. Her face cycled through emotions: rage, fear, calculation, desperation. You can't prove any of this in court, she finally screamed. It's all circumstantial. Actually, I pulled out the final document. The district attorney disagrees. This is a draft arrest warrant for elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. They're particularly interested in your pattern of targeting elderly victims across multiple states. The warrant draft, which Patricia Hartman had obtained through her connections, listed Emma's previous victims. 3 other elderly people in different states who'd filed complaints that were never fully investigated. 3 other families. My mother's voice was barely a whisper. Emma, how could you? Because I deserved more. Emma exploded her mask, finally dropping completely. I'm the oldest, I'm the smartest, but precious Raquel got all the attention, all the love. Grandma always liked her better. You all did. I deserved that money. I earned it. By drugging our grandmother. Jake's voice was deadly quiet. By stealing from her while she was dying. By turning us against our sister, Sarah added, looking at me with tears in her eyes. Raquel, I'm so sorry. We believed her. We voted to... God, what did we almost do? The dining room erupted into chaos. Family members shouted questions and accusations. Emma tried to grab the evidence, knocking over glasses of wine that spread across the white tablecloth like blood. The turkey sat forgotten as 20 years of family dysfunction came pouring out. Marcus stood up slowly. I need to tell you all something else. His voice cut through the noise, commanding attention. Emma's been doing this to me too, hiding money, controlling our finances. She told me my family was toxic, made me cut them off. I haven't spoken to my mother in 3 years because Emma said she was trying to break us up. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. These texts from my mom. Emma sent them, from my account, telling her I never wanted to see her again. She's been isolating me just like she tried to isolate Grandma. And the prenup, he continued, his voice breaking. She made me sign it, saying it was to protect both of us. But I had a lawyer friend look at it recently. If we divorce, I get nothing. She gets everything, including my family's inheritance that she's already spent. Emma turned on him with vicious fury. You pathetic little man, after everything I've done for you. Done for me? You mean to me? Marcus shot back. I'm in debt because of you. My credit is ruined. My family thinks I hate them. Uncle Carl had been quietly reviewing more documents from the folder. According to these bank records, Emma's theft goes back further than 5 years. There are irregularities dating back to when Grandpa was alive. Did she? No, I said firmly. The investigator checked. Grandpa's death was natural, but Emma did start skimming from his accounts during his final illness. She's been planning this for a decade. Aunt Dorothy looked sick. This whole time, every family gathering, every holiday, she was plotting. The security guard appeared in the doorway, clearly overwhelmed. Should I call the actual police? This seems like it's escalated beyond my job description. Yes, Emma shouted. No, everyone else yelled simultaneously. I held up my hand. Officer Linda Harrison from the Elder Abuse Unit is already on her way. I texted her when I arrived. She'll be here within the hour. Emma's face went completely white. She looked around the room like a trapped animal, seeing no allies, no escape routes. The family that had cheered her announcement just an hour ago now looked at her with disgust and horror. This isn't over, she hissed at me. You think you've won, I'll destroy you in court. I'll tell everyone what you really are. A granddaughter who loved her grandmother, I said calmly. Someone who refused to let you get away with elder abuse. Please tell everyone. I'm sure the media will be very interested in your story. Local woman runs multi-state elder fraud scheme. Target's own grandmother. It'll make fascinating reading. Emma grabbed her purse and tried to push past Jake toward the door. He blocked her path. You're not leaving until the police arrive. You can't hold me here. That's kidnapping. It's citizen's arrest, Uncle Carl corrected. I've called my law firm. They're sending someone to ensure everything is handled properly. Emma spun back to face my mother. Mom, you can't let them do this to me. I'm your daughter. My mother stood slowly aging a decade in moments. So is Raquel, and you tried to destroy her. You drugged me, Emma. You stole from your grandmother. You're not the daughter I raised. The room fell silent except for Emma's heavy breathing and the distant sound of sirens growing closer. The elaborate Thanksgiving dinner sat cooling on the table gravy, congealing stuffing growing cold, but the family's appetite for truth had finally been satisfied. I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. The folder that had felt so heavy that morning now seemed light as air. Grandma's evidence had done its work. Emma's crimes were exposed. Her victims validated her elaborate deceptions, shattered. But as I looked around at my family's devastated faces, I wondered if anything could repair the damage Emma had done. Trust once broken was harder to rebuild than any inheritance to recover. The sirens grew louder, but before the police arrived, something predictable yet still painful began to unfold. As the initial shock wore off, some family members entered what I can only describe as desperate denial mode. There must be an explanation, Aunt Dorothy said, wringing her hands. This is Emma we're talking about. She volunteers at the church. She organized the fundraiser for the Miller family when their house burned down. With whose money? I asked quietly. Did anyone ever verify where those donations actually went? Dorothy flinched, but pressed on. She's not some criminal mastermind. There has to be a misunderstanding. Maybe Grandma was confused and gave her permission. Dorothy, you heard the recording? Uncle Carl interrupted firmly. That wasn't confusion. That was coercion. But Dorothy wasn't alone in her denial. My mother's cousin Janet, who'd driven down from Boulder, picked up one of the bank statements with shaking hands. These numbers could mean anything. Maybe Emma was managing Grandma's money, helping her pay bills. To offshore accounts. Marcus interjected, his voice hollow. Janet, I've been living with her for 8 years. I just found out we're $600,000 in debt. She's been hiding bills, taking out credit cards in my name. Last month, she told me we couldn't afford to visit my dying father, but I just saw those photos of her in Monaco. Emma seized on the doubt. See, they know me. This is all a misunderstanding orchestrated by Raquel. She's jealous. She's always been jealous. Stop. Sarah Jake's wife stood up from the table. Her usual quiet demeanor was gone, replaced by something harder. Emma, you borrowed $40,000 from us last year. You said it was for emergency medical treatment for your son. You cried in my kitchen, showed me fake medical bills. We emptied our savings, took out a loan against Jake's truck. Jake looked at his wife in shock. You never told me the amount. You were so stressed about work I didn't want to add to it. Emma promised she'd pay it back within 6 months. Sarah's voice grew stronger. But Tyler never had surgery, did he, Emma? He never even had the condition you described. How dare you? I called the hospital, Sarah continued. After seeing these documents, I called them. They have no record of Tyler being a patient. The surgeon you mentioned doesn't exist. The room erupted again as more revelations poured out. Cousin Stephanie admitted Emma had convinced her to invest $30,000 in a business venture that never materialized. Uncle Patrick revealed he'd co-signed a loan for Emma that she'd defaulted on, destroying his credit. Even teenage Michael spoke up about Emma telling him his college fund had been mismanaged by me turning him against the aunt who'd actually started that fund. But still, some clung to denial. This can't all be true, Janet insisted. People don't just do this, not to family. That's exactly why she got away with it, I said. Because we don't want to believe family could betray us this deeply. We make excuses, find explanations, doubt our own instincts. Emma counted on that. Uncle Carl had been methodically reviewing every document, his accounting expertise making him the most qualified to understand the full scope. I've been going through these records, he said slowly. The patterns are undeniable. This isn't mismanagement or confusion. This is systematic theft, spanning over a decade. He pulled out a spreadsheet the investigator had created. Look at this. Every withdrawal corresponds with a family crisis. When Jake's daughter broke her arm, $10,000 withdrawn. When Dorothy's husband needed heart surgery, $25,000. When the church needed a new roof, $15,000. Emma manufactured or exploited every family emergency to steal more money. But she seemed so generous, Dorothy whispered, always the first to offer help to organize support. With Grandma's money, I pointed out, she was generous with stolen funds while positioning herself as the family savior. Marcus laughed bitterly. She did the same thing to my family, convinced me they were toxic, that she was protecting me. Meanwhile, she was draining my inheritance behind my back. My siblings think I'm an ungrateful son who abandoned them for money. Detective Linda Harrison arrived, then accompanied by another officer and someone from the district attorney's office. The security guard looked relieved to hand over responsibility to actual law enforcement. Ms. Richardson, Detective Harrison addressed me. We've reviewed the preliminary evidence your attorney forwarded. We'll need to take statements from everyone present. Emma attempted one last manipulation. This is a family matter. We don't need police involvement. Can't we handle this ourselves? Elder abuse is a felony, ma'am, Detective Harrison replied firmly. Multiple felonies from what I've seen. This stopped being a family matter when you committed crimes. As the reality set in, the family's reactions varied wildly. Some cried, some raged, some sat in stunned silence. My mother seemed to age before our eyes, the weight of enabling Emma crushing her spirit. I defended her. My mother said to no one in particular. When Raquel spent all that time with Mother Emma told me she was hovering, being controlling. I believed her. I told Raquel to give Mother space. She looked at me with haunted eyes. I kept you from your grandmother because Emma said it was unhealthy. The detective began taking statements, starting with Marcus, whose testimony would be crucial given his inside knowledge of Emma's activities. As he spoke, revealing more about their life together, the family portrait grew even darker. She monitored all my communications, Marcus told the detective. Read my emails, checked my texts, said it was because she loved me so much, wanted to protect our marriage. But really, she was making sure I couldn't talk to anyone who might question our finances. Classic isolation tactics, the detective noted, common in financial abuse cases. Jake's kids, 16-year-old Tyler and 14-year-old Megan, had been silent throughout the chaos. Finally, Tyler spoke up. Mom, Aunt Emma told us Aunt Raquel was trying to steal our college funds. She said that's why we shouldn't trust her. She showed us papers, Megan added. Said Aunt Raquel had been asking Grandma to change her will to cut us out. None of that was true, I told them gently. Your college funds are safe. They always were. I would never hurt you. Tyler's face crumpled. We were mean to you. At Christmas, at Easter. We didn't sit with you because Aunt Emma said you were dangerous. Um, she told us you had mental problems, Megan whispered. Said you might hurt us if we got too close. The cruelty of poisoning children against their aunt added another layer to Emma's crimes. Detective Harrison made careful notes, recognizing the pattern of manipulation that extended to every family member. I need everyone to understand, the detective said, addressing the room. What we're seeing here is a sophisticated criminal operation. Ms. Emma Richardson didn't just steal money. She orchestrated a comprehensive campaign of psychological manipulation, isolation, and control. These aren't the actions of someone who made a few bad choices. This is predatory behavior. Some family members bristled at the harsh assessment. She's still our family, Janet protested weakly. Oh, so was her victim, the detective replied pointedly. Your mother, who she drugged and robbed while dying. Your sister, she gestured to me, who she tried to frame and exile. Your relationships, which she systematically destroyed for profit. The district attorney's representative, a sharp-eyed woman named Gloria Chen, spoke up. We'll be investigating the full extent of Ms. Richardson's crimes. Based on preliminary evidence, we're looking at charges including elder abuse, fraud, forgery, identity theft, and potentially racketeering given the interstate nature of her activities. Racketeering, Dorothy gasped, like organized crime. Financial crimes of this scope and sophistication often fall under RICO statutes, Chen explained. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a continuing criminal enterprise. Emma, who had been growing paler with each revelation, suddenly lurched toward the French doors, leading to the backyard. Detective Harrison moved swiftly, blocking her path. I wouldn't recommend that, Ms. Richardson. It'll only add evading arrest to your charges. You don't understand, Emma screamed. They owe me all of them. I sacrificed everything for this family, my dreams, my potential. I deserve that money. You had dreams, Marcus asked sarcastically, beyond marrying someone you could rob. Emma turned on him with venom. You were nothing when I met you, a pathetic mama's boy with a trust fund. I made you interesting. You made me a victim, Marcus shot back, and my mother died thinking I hated her because of the messages you sent. That revelation sent another shock wave through the room. Marcus's mother had passed 6 months ago, estranged from her son thanks to Emma's manipulation. She died alone. Marcus continued, tears streaming down his face. The nurses said she kept asking for me, but she thought I didn't want to see her because of the texts you sent from my phone telling her she was dead to me. Even those still clinging to denial couldn't ignore the pain in Marcus's voice. Dorothy finally stopped making excuses, sinking into a chair with her head in her hands. How did we not see it, she asked. How did we let this happen? Because Emma was very good at what she did, Detective Harrison said not unkindly. Financial predators often target family members because emotional bonds make people vulnerable. They exploit trust and love. As the detective prepared to arrest Emma, my sister made one last desperate play. Raquel planned this, she screamed. She set me up. She's the one who should be arrested. For what? Detective Harrison asked calmly. Exposing your crimes. That's not illegal, Ms. Richardson. In fact, it's what we hope more families would do when they discover elder abuse. The officer read Emma her rights as the family watched in stunned silence. The woman who'd stood at this same table an hour ago declaring me expelled from the family was now being led away in handcuffs. This isn't over, Emma shouted as they guided her toward the door. I'll tell everyone what you all really are. Every secret, every lie, every shameful thing you've hidden. Like what? Jake called after her. That we trusted our sister, that we believed family meant something. Those aren't shameful secrets, Emma. The only shame here is yours. As the police car pulled away with Emma in the back seat, the family stood in the wreckage of what should have been a peaceful Thanksgiving. The turkey sat untouched, the carefully prepared sides growing cold, but the appetite for truth had finally overcome the hunger for comfortable lies. The police car had barely disappeared around the corner when Marcus suddenly stood up from the dining room table, his entire body trembling. The man who'd sat quietly through years of Emma's manipulation finally reached his breaking point. "I need to tell you all something," he announced, his voice shaking but determined. "Everything I've discovered in the last few weeks. You think you know how bad it was? You have no idea." Sarah poured him a glass of water as he gripped the edge of the table for support. The family, still reeling from Emma's arrest, turned their attention to the man they dismissed as Emma's weak-willed husband. 3 weeks ago, I found a credit card statement hidden in Emma's craft room," Marcus began. "A card I didn't know existed in my name, maxed out at $50,000. When I confronted her, she said it was for household expenses, that I was too stressed with work to handle the finances." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos of documents. But I started digging. That one card. It was just the beginning. She'd opened 12 credit cards in my name. 12! The total debt is over $300,000. Gasps echoed around the table. Uncle Carl, ever the accountant, looked physically ill. "Marcus, that's identity theft on top of everything else." "But wait, it gets worse." Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. "You all know about the prenup she insisted on before we married. She said it was to protect both of us, standard procedure. I was so in love I signed without really reading it." He laughed bitterly. "I had my friend Tom, he's a contract lawyer, look at it last week. Not only does she get everything in a divorce, but there's a clause that makes me liable for all debts incurred during the marriage. All of them, even the ones in her name." "That can't be legal," Jake protested. "It is, if I signed it willingly," Marcus replied. "And I did. She even had me initial the debt liability clause specifically, said it was about being partners, sharing everything." My mother reached out to touch his arm. "Marcus, we had no idea." "Of course you didn't." Marcus's composure cracked. "She made sure of that." "Do you know why I haven't seen my mother in 3 years? Emma told me Mom threatened her, said she'd ruin our marriage. Showed me emails from my mother's account calling Emma a gold digger, saying she'd prove Emma was only after money." He swiped to another screen. "These are the actual emails Emma sent from my account to my mother. Look at them. Look at what she made my mother believe about me." He passed the phone around. The messages were cruel beyond belief. "You were never a good mother. Emma showed me what real love looks like. Stop trying to contact me. You're dead to me. I know what you did. Emma told me everything. Stay away from my family. My mother had no idea what I was talking about." Marcus continued, tears flowing freely now. She was confused, heartbroken. She kept trying to reach out, and Emma would intercept her calls, her letters. "Told me Mom was stalking us, that we might need a restraining order." "She isolated you," I said gently, "just like she tried to isolate Grandma." Marcus nodded vigorously. "My sister called once when Emma wasn't home. She told me Mom was sick, begged me to visit. When I confronted Emma, she had a complete breakdown. Said my family was trying to break us up because they were jealous of our happiness. She cried for hours, made me promise not to contact them." "When did your mother pass?" Sarah asked softly. 6 months ago." Marcus's voice broke completely. "She died, thinking I hated her. The nurses at her hospice said she called for me until the end. My sister sent me videos of her asking why I wouldn't come. Emma deleted them before I could watch, said it would only hurt me." The room fell silent, absorbing the magnitude of Emma's cruelty. She hadn't just stolen money, she'd stolen relationships, last moments the chance for reconciliation. "But that's not even the worst part," Marcus said, steadying himself. "Last month I was going through old boxes in the garage looking for Christmas decorations. I found documents from my family's estate. My grandmother had left me properties in Maine investment accounts, family heirlooms. Emma told me the estate was smaller than expected, that taxes ate up most of it. He pulled out a folder he'd hidden under his chair. She forged my signature, liquidated everything. The properties, the accounts, even sold my grandmother's jewelry collection that was supposed to go to my daughter if I ever had one. Over $2 million gone. 2 million? Uncle Carl grabbed the documents. Marcus, this is grand larceny. The properties were in my family for generations, Marcus continued. My great-grandfather built the main house with his own hands. It's all gone. Sold to developers who tore it down for condos. Sarah started crying. Marcus, I'm so sorry. We all just thought. Emma always said you came from modest means, that she was helping support your family. My family wasn't wealthy like the Vanderbilts, but we were comfortable, very comfortable, until Emma got her hands on everything. He turned to me. Raquel, you saved me tonight. If you hadn't exposed her, I'd still be living in that fog, thinking I was lucky to have her. How did you not know about the properties? Janet asked, though not unkindly. Marcus hung his head. Emma handled everything after my grandmother died. Said I was too emotional to deal with paperwork. She'd bring me documents to sign always when I was exhausted from work or upset about my grandmother. I trusted my wife. We all trusted her, my mother said quietly. That's what makes this so devastating. Marcus wasn't finished. There's something else. Emma's been having an affair. Multiple affairs, actually. I found hotel receipts, messages on a hidden phone. She wasn't even careful about it. When I confronted her last week, she laughed. Said I was too pathetic to leave her, that no one would believe me over her. Who was she seeing? Jake asked. Does it matter? Marcus replied. The point is, while she was destroying my family connections, stealing my inheritance, and ruining my credit, she was also cheating. The prenup has an infidelity clause, but only if the injured party can prove financial damages from the affair. She made sure I couldn't prove anything. He looked around the room at faces filled with shock and sympathy. I've been living in hell for 8 years, and I didn't even know it. She convinced me I was depressed, anxious, paranoid, had me on medications I probably didn't need. Said my family was the cause of my mental health issues. The medications, my mother said suddenly. She was giving you something too. Marcus nodded. Anxiety medication that made me foggy compliant. Said she got them from a friend who was a doctor. I'm betting they weren't even legitimate prescriptions. Detective Harrison had left her card and Uncle Carl was already dialing. We need to add this to her charges. Marcus, you need protection. If Emma gets bail... She won't get bail, I interjected. Not with flight risk to those offshore accounts. Marcus laughed, but it was a broken sound. You know what the ironic part is? I still loved her until tonight. Even after finding all of this out, part of me wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. That's how good she was at manipulation. Stockholm Syndrome, Sarah suggested gently. It's real, Marcus. My therapist said the same thing, he admitted. I started seeing someone secretly 3 weeks ago. She said I showed classic signs of psychological abuse, but I still defended Emma, still made excuses. He stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the backyard where Emma had hosted so many family gatherings. She used to stand right there during parties holding court, everyone hanging on her every word. She'd tell stories about her volunteer work, her charity efforts, all funded with stolen money. The Miller family fundraiser, Aunt Dorothy said suddenly. She raised $30,000 when their house burned. Did they ever receive it? I'll find out, Uncle Carl said grimly. I'm beginning to think we need a full audit of every charity event Emma ever organized. Marcus turned back to face us. I'm testifying against her. Everything I know, everything I've found, everything she did. My lawyer says I might be able to get the prenup thrown out due to fraud and coercion. It won't bring back my mother or my inheritance, but maybe I can salvage something. We'll all testify, Jake said firmly. Whatever you need, Marcus, you're still family. Am I? Marcus asked, vulnerability clear in his voice. I helped her, unknowingly, but I was still part of it. I stood by while she destroyed Raquel's reputation. I believed her lies. You were a victim, I told him, just like Grandma, just like all of us. Emma's gift was making her victims feel like accomplices. That's how she kept us silent. Marcus nodded gratefully, then pulled out one last document. I hired my own investigator after finding those credit cards. He discovered something Patricia Hartman's investigator missed. Emma has a storage unit across town, paid for in cash under a false name. I have the key. He held up a small brass key. I haven't looked inside yet. I was too scared, but given everything else. We need to tell the police, my Uncle Carl said immediately. That could be evidence. Or stolen property, I added. Grandma had several pieces of jewelry go missing over the years, small things she attributed to misplacing them. And my mother's engagement ring, my mother said suddenly. It disappeared after Emma helped me reorganize my jewelry box. She said the clasp must have broken and it fell somewhere. My father's watch, Jake added. His Rolex from the company vanished during our move. Emma helped pack. The list grew as family members recalled items that had mysteriously disappeared over the years, always with Emma somehow involved in the circumstances. Marcus sank back into his chair. 8 years of my life stolen, my family gone, my inheritance depleted, my credit destroyed. How do I come back from this? One day at a time, Sarah said, with support, with truth, with people who actually care about you. Your real family, Jake added, your mother's relatives. We'll help you reconnect. If they'll even speak to me, Marcus said despairingly, after the things Emma made me say. They will, I assured him. Once they understand what happened, manipulation and abuse explain actions even if they don't excuse them. Your family will understand. The sun was setting now, casting orange light through the windows. The Thanksgiving dinner remained largely untouched, but something more nourishing had been served. Truth, no matter how bitter. Marcus looked at me with gratitude that went beyond words. Raquel, I'm sorry. For every time I took Emma's side, every time I didn't question her lies about you, you didn't deserve any of it. None of us deserved what Emma did, I replied, but we survived it, and now we can heal from it. As the family began discussing next steps, lawyers, protection orders, financial audits, Marcus quietly excused himself to call his sister. It was time to start rebuilding the bridges Emma had burned. His broken voice carried from the hallway. Kelly, it's me. I know it's been 3 years, but I need to tell you something about Emma and about Mom. The sound of his sister's tears through the phone speaker told us everything. Another family would begin healing tonight. Another set of Emma's victims finding their way back to each other. The damage was extensive, but not irreparable. Truth, as painful as it was, had set us all free. As Marcus spoke with his sister in the hallway, his broken voice carrying through the house, the doorbell rang with authority. Attorney Patricia Hartman stood on the porch, accompanied by Detective Harrison, who had returned with additional officers and a warrant team. I apologize for interrupting your holiday further, Patricia said as I let them in, but given Mr. Richardson's revelation about the storage unit, we need to move quickly. Evidence has a way of disappearing when perpetrators have accomplices we don't know about. Detective Harrison nodded grimly. We've already discovered Emma Richardson has been in contact with someone named Derek Hoffman. Ring any bells? The family exchanged blank looks, but Marcus, returning from his phone call with red-rimmed eyes, froze. Derek is her personal trainer. She's been seeing him 3 times a week for 2 years. More than training, apparently, Detective Harrison said. Phone records show hundreds of late-night calls and texts. We believe he may have been helping her move money. He has a background in financial services before becoming a trainer. We need that storage unit key, Patricia said urgently. Marcus handed it over without hesitation. Unit 47 at Secure Store on Alameda. The account is under the name Sarah Chen. Sarah Chen. I felt my stomach drop. That's Tracy Chen's mother's name, the college roommate whose grandmother Emma defrauded. Detective Harrison's expression darkened. She used her first victim's family name as an alias. That's particularly cold even for a financial predator. Patricia turned to address the room. I need everyone to understand something. What we're dealing with here isn't just theft or elder abuse. Based on the evidence Raquel provided and what's emerging now, Emma Richardson appears to be part of a larger network of financial criminals who target elderly victims. A network? Uncle Carl stood up straighter. You mean this is organized crime? The FBI's white-collar crime division has been tracking similar cases across 7 states, Detective Harrison explained. Same patterns. Family members who ingratiate themselves with elderly relatives, systematic theft, offshore accounts, and property fraud. We think Emma learned these techniques from someone. Patricia pulled out her tablet, showing us a series of photographs. These individuals have all been arrested in the last year for similar schemes. Notice anything? The photos showed people of various ages and backgrounds, but Marcus gasped at one image. That's Veronica, Emma's friend from her book club. She visited last Christmas. Veronica Palmer arrested 6 months ago for stealing $800,000 from her grandfather, Detective Harrison confirmed. She's cooperating with authorities. She's already confirmed Emma was part of their group. Group? My mother's voice was barely audible. There's a group that does this. They share techniques, recommend lawyers who will create specific types of prenups, exchange information about offshore banking, Patricia explained. It's sophisticated and organized. Emma wasn't just a lone wolf. She was part of a pack. The revelation sent fresh shockwaves through the room. This wasn't just a family betrayal, it was participation in an actual criminal enterprise. Mrs. Hartman brought me back because we need to execute the warrant tonight, Detective Harrison announced, but also because several family members may be in danger. These groups don't take exposure lightly. When one member gets caught, others often try to destroy evidence or intimidate witnesses. Intimidate. Jake moved protectively closer to his children. We'll have patrol units watching the homes of key witnesses, the detective assured us. But I need everyone to be vigilant. Any strange calls, unexpected visitors, missing documents. Report them immediately. 2 officers prepared to leave for the storage unit while Detective Harrison continued taking statements. The district attorney's representative, Gloria Chen, had also arrived and was setting up a laptop in the kitchen. Mr. Richardson, she addressed Marcus, your testimony is crucial. The financial abuse combined with the isolation tactics and identity theft make this a federal case. Are you prepared for what that means? Marcus nodded firmly. Whatever it takes. I want justice for my mother, for Raquel's grandmother, for everyone Emma hurt. Speaking of everyone, Patricia interjected, I've been contacted by 3 other families since word got out about Emma's arrest. Apparently, she volunteered at several nursing homes over the years. Families are starting to question missing items and strange financial transactions. The scope kept expanding. What had started as a family betrayal was revealing itself as a widespread criminal operation. Gloria Chen pulled me aside. Ms. Richardson, Raquel, your evidence collection was remarkably thorough. Have you ever considered working with our Elder Abuse Prevention Unit? We need people who understand these crimes from the inside. Before I could respond, commotion erupted from the living room. The officers monitoring the police radio had received urgent communication. Emma's made a phone call from custody, one reported. To that, Derek Hoffman, he's been spotted at the storage facility. He's trying to clear it out, Detective Harrison said, already moving. We need to go. Now. I'm coming with you, Marcus declared. That's not advisable, the detective began. That storage unit might have things from my mother, my grandmother. I need to see what she kept. His voice broke. Please. I need to know what else she stole from me. After quick deliberation, they agreed Marcus could follow in a separate vehicle with Patricia Hartman. As they prepared to leave, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't answer that, Detective Harrison warned, but I'd already accepted the call. You think you've won. Emma's voice was venomous through the jail phone. You have no idea what you've started. Derek knows everything. About you, about your precious grandmother's secrets. Did you really think she was so innocent? Emma, your attorney should have advised against contacting. Shut up and listen, she screamed. There are things about our family you don't know, things Grandma did, papers in that storage unit that will destroy this family's reputation forever. You wanted truth, you'll get more than you bargained for. The line went dead. Detective Harrison was already on her radio reporting the contact. She's trying to manipulate you even from jail, Patricia said gently. Whatever's in that unit, we'll face it together. But unease settled over me. What could Emma possibly have on Grandma? What secrets had she uncovered in her years of deception? 20 minutes later, we received word from the storage facility. Derek Hoffman had been apprehended trying to load boxes into a van. The unit's contents were secure, but what they found inside changed everything we thought we knew about Emma's crimes. Detective Harrison called Patricia's cell as we waited anxiously at the house. You need to see this. All of you. This is bigger than we imagined. At the storage facility under bright floodlights, investigators cataloged Emma's hidden collection. Boxes upon boxes of stolen items. Not just from our family, but from dozens of victims. Jewelry, watches, coin collections, stamp albums, even photo albums and personal letters. She kept trophies, Gloria Chen said with disgust. Classic predator behavior. But in the back corner sat a filing cabinet that made everyone pause. It contained detailed records of Emma's crimes, spreadsheets, tracking thefts, contact information for other elderly targets, instructions for accessing offshore accounts. It was a complete confession in documentary form. Why would she keep this? Uncle Carl asked, bewildered. Oh, insurance, Patricia explained. If her network ever turned on her, she had evidence to bargain with. Criminals rarely trust each other. Marcus stood before a box labeled with his family name. Inside were his grandmother's jewelry, his father's military medals, photo albums he thought were lost forever. He broke down completely, clutching a picture of his mother. She kept it all, he wept, like trophies. My family's memories, their treasures, sitting in this cold storage unit while she told me they were gone. But the most shocking discovery came from a locked briefcase. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. Not about Grandma's supposed secrets, but about Emma's future plans. Patricia read from a notebook in Emma's handwriting. Phase 3. Mother. Once Raquel eliminated and family isolated, increase mother's medication. Power of attorney by January. Liquidate main house by March. Fatal accident by summer, if necessary. My mother, who had insisted on coming to the facility, collapsed against Jake. Emma hadn't just been stealing from Grandma, she'd been planning my mother's death. She was going to kill me, my mother whispered. My own daughter. The medications she was giving you, I said, remembering. She was already starting, making you compliant, confused. Detective Harrison held up evidence bags containing various pills. We'll test these, but preliminary field tests show benzodiazepines and other controlled substances. She was slowly increasing the dosage. The notebook contained similar plans for other family members. Jake would have a workplace accident after signing over his contracting business. Uncle Carl would be framed for embezzlement at his firm. Even Marcus was scheduled for elimination once his usefulness ended. We weren't family to her, Jake said, stunned. We were just resources to be harvested. Well, look at this, was an officer called from another section. He'd found Emma's real financial records. The offshore accounts contained over $4 million stolen from various victims over 15 years. 4 million, Uncle Carl calculated quickly. That's far more than we thought. Where did it all come from? Gloria Chen had the answer. She's been doing this since college. We've identified at least 40 victims across multiple states. Your grandmother was actually one of the later targets. Emma had perfected her methods by then. As investigators continued cataloging evidence, we learned the true scope of Emma's crimes. She'd infiltrated nursing homes as a volunteer, identifying wealthy residents with family conflicts. She'd pose as a financial advisor, a home health aide, even a grief counselor, each identity carefully crafted to access vulnerable elderly people. Derek Hoffman, sitting in the back of a police car, had already started talking. He revealed Emma was planning to flee the country next month. The Thanksgiving confrontation had accelerated her timeline. She'd intended to have me arrested or committed before disappearing with her stolen millions. She knew the walls were closing in, Detective Harrison explained. Your grandmother's trust and your investigation forced her to act prematurely. If you'd waited even another month, she'd be gone, I finished, and Mom might be dead. The storage unit had one more surprise. In a sealed envelope marked insurance, Emma had recorded conversations with her criminal network. Names, dates, amounts, methods. A complete roadmap of the elderly fraud ring operating across the country. This is a goldmine for federal prosecutors, Gloria Chen said excitedly. We can take down the entire network. As we prepared to leave the facility, Marcus made a decision. I want to help. Whatever the FBI needs, whatever testimony, I'll do it. These people stole more than money. They stole final moments, last goodbyes, family connections that can never be repaired. Oh, we all will, Jake added firmly. Emma didn't just betray us. She betrayed every elderly person who trusted her, every family she destroyed. The ride back to the house was silent, each person processing the magnitude of what we'd discovered. Emma wasn't just a greedy sister or corrupted family member. She was a career criminal who'd viewed her own family as marks in a long con. At the house, we found the rest of the family watching the news. Emma's arrest had made headlines. Denver woman arrested in multi-million-dollar elder fraud scheme. Her photo filled the screen, the same charming smile that had fooled us all now revealed as a predator's mask. The news is saying she's connected to a nationwide ring, Stephanie reported. They're calling it one of the largest elder fraud operations ever uncovered. I sank into a chair, exhausted beyond measure. The folder I'd brought to dinner sat on the sideboard. Its purpose served beyond my wildest expectations. Grandma's evidence hadn't just exposed Emma. It had triggered the downfall of an entire criminal network. Grandma knew, I said quietly. Somehow she knew this was bigger than just Emma. That's why she was so meticulous with the evidence. Patricia Hartman pulled out one last document from her briefcase. Your grandmother left something else. A letter to be opened only if Emma was arrested for her crimes. With trembling hands, I opened Grandma's final message. My dearest family, if you're reading this, then Emma's darkness has finally been brought to light. I suspected for years that she was not alone in her schemes, that others had taught her these terrible ways. I pray my evidence helps stop not just Emma, but all those who prey on the vulnerable. To Raquel, my brave one, thank you for having the courage I lacked. To the rest of my family, learn from this. Evil often wears a familiar face and speaks in loving tones. Guard each other. Trust but verify. And never let family bonds blind you to the truth. All my love, Rose. As I finished reading, the room fell silent, except for quiet tears. Grandma had known more than she'd ever let on, playing a longer game than any of us had realized. She was protecting all of us, my mother whispered, even from beyond. The doorbell rang one more time. Agent Sarah Mitchell from the FBI stood on the porch. I apologize for the late hour, but we need to discuss protection protocols. Emma Richardson's arrest has sent shockwaves through her network. You're all heroes for exposing this, but that also makes you targets. We need to keep you safe while we round up the others. As we gathered to hear about witness protection and safety measures, I looked around at my family. Broken, but not destroyed. Betrayed, but not beaten. We'd lost our innocence about the depths of family betrayal, but we'd gained something more valuable, the truth. and with it the chance to rebuild on a foundation of honesty. Emma had tried to destroy us all, but in the end, she'd only destroyed herself. As Agent Mitchell outlined safety protocols in the living room, movement in the kitchen caught my attention. My cousin Stephanie stood by the sink, gripping the counter with white knuckles. She'd been unusually quiet even for her reserved nature, and something in her posture suggested more than shock. "I need to say something," Stephanie announced suddenly, her voice cutting through Agent Mitchell's explanation. "I work at the coffee shop in Grandma's care facility. I saw everything, every single day." The room turned to her in surprise. I'd known she worked there, but she'd never mentioned seeing anything significant. "Raquel visited Grandma every single day." Stephanie continued, her voice growing stronger. "Morning coffee before work. She'd sit with Grandma for exactly 45 minutes, reading the newspaper aloud, discussing the stories. Even when Grandma couldn't respond anymore, Raquel kept coming." "Why didn't you say anything before?" Jake asked gently. Stephanie's face crumpled. "Because Emma convinced me not to. She said Raquel was putting on a show, that she only visited when people were watching. She said I'd be helping the family by keeping quiet about what I saw." "But that wasn't all you saw, was it?" I prompted softly, recognizing the guilt in her expression. "No." Stephanie pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I took pictures, videos. I thought I was gathering evidence of Raquel's manipulation like Emma asked. But looking at them now..." She connected her phone to the TV, and suddenly the screen filled with images that took my breath away. Me reading to Grandma, brushing her hair, helping her eat, laughing at her jokes, crying when she had bad days. Dozens of candid moments over months, a visual diary of devotion. "This is from 3 days before Grandma died," Stephanie said, playing a video. On screen, I sat beside Grandma's bed, holding her hand. The audio was faint but audible. "It's okay, Grandma. I know you're tired. You don't have to fight anymore. I'll take care of everything. I'll protect the family. I promise." Grandma's eyes, though clouded, focused on me with clear recognition. She squeezed my hand 3 times, our signal for "I love you" when words became too difficult. My mother sobbed openly. "She knew you. Even at the end, she knew you." Emma visited exactly 4 times in Grandma's last month. Stephanie continued swiping to different footage. "Always on the first, always with papers. Watch this." The video showed Emma entering Grandma's room with a large bag. She immediately closed the blinds, unusual for morning visits. The angle didn't capture everything, but Emma's body language was furtive, suspicious. "I pretended to be cleaning the coffee station nearby," Stephanie explained. "Listen carefully." Emma's voice muffled but distinguishable. "Sign here and here. No, don't read it, just sign. That's it. Good girl." The condescension in her tone was chilling. She spoke to our grandmother like a child or a pet, not the formidable woman who'd built a business empire alongside Grandpa. "There's more," Stephanie said, pulling up another file. "The nurses talked during coffee breaks. Linda wasn't the only one who noticed things." She played an audio recording from her phone, clearly taken covertly but audible enough. "That Emma gives me the creeps," one nurse said. "Yesterday she was going through Rose's dresser while she thought I was out." "Did you report it?" another asked. "To Who She's family, but I'm telling you, something's not right. The old lady gets so agitated when she visits." "Not like with the other granddaughter. Raquel Rose lights up when she walks in." "Night and day. I've never seen a grandkid more devoted than that Raquel." Stephanie stopped the recording. "I have hours of this. Nurses, orderlies, other visitors. Everyone talking about how dedicated you were, Raquel. And I said nothing, because Emma told me they were all fooled by your act." "You were 20 years old," I told her gently. "Emma was a master manipulator. She fooled all of us." "But I had proof," Stephanie gestured at her phone. "Actual evidence that you were the loving granddaughter and Emma was the predator, and I kept quiet." Agent Mitchell stepped forward. "Ms. Martinez, these recordings could be crucial evidence. Would you be willing to share them with the FBI?" Stephanie nodded immediately. Whatever helps. I have everything backed up to the cloud. Photos, videos, audio recordings spanning 2 years. As Stephanie worked with the agent to transfer files, my Uncle Patrick cleared his throat. Since we're sharing truths, I need to admit something too. Patrick. My mother's younger brother had always been the quiet one at family gatherings. He stood now pulling out a worn notebook. I'm an accountant like Carl. 6 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in some family financial discussions. Things Emma said didn't add up, so I started keeping notes. He opened the notebook, revealing pages of meticulous entries. Emma claimed she couldn't afford to help with Grandma's care in June because of car repairs, but she posted Instagram photos from a spa resort the same week, said she won the trip in a raffle. You investigated her, Uncle Carl asked, surprised. Not investigated, just noted inconsistencies. Here, August she borrowed $5,000 from Mom for emergency dental work, but I saw her at the casino in Blackhawk that weekend playing high-stakes poker. Page after page documented Emma's lies, each with dates, amounts, and contradicting evidence. Patrick had been building a case without even realizing it. Why didn't you say anything? My mother asked. Patrick's face reddened, because every time I started to Emma would do something generous. Donate to charity, organize a fundraiser, help someone in need. I thought maybe I was being petty, focusing on small lies when she did so much good. With stolen money, Jake pointed out grimly. I see that now, but at the time... Patrick handed the notebook to Agent Mitchell. There are financial patterns here that might help your investigation. She had regular deposits on the 15th of each month, always just under $10,000 to avoid reporting requirements. Structuring, Agent Mitchell noted. Another federal crime to add to the list. The revelations continued. Sarah's teenage daughter Megan raised her hand like she was in school. I have something to... All eyes turned to the 14-year-old. Aunt Emma asked me to help with her computer sometimes, said she wasn't good with technology, but she was lying. She knew exactly what she was doing. She had me set up encrypted messaging apps, show her how to use VPNs, create anonymous email accounts. When was this? Agent Mitchell asked gently. Starting 2 years ago, she paid me $50 each time, said it was our secret project. She told me she was protecting herself from identity theft. Megan looked miserable. I taught her how to hide her digital footprint. I helped her commit crimes. You didn't know, Jake assured his daughter. She used you just like she used everyone. But I should have wondered why she needed so many anonymous accounts, Megan insisted. She had me create at least 20 different email addresses, all with fake names. And she was really interested in learning about cryptocurrency. This caught the FBI agent's attention. Cryptocurrency, did she have you set up any wallets? Megan nodded. Bitcoin, Ethereum, some others I don't remember. She said it was for investment diversification. I thought I was helping her plan for retirement. Agent Mitchell made rapid notes. We'll need those wallet addresses. Cryptocurrency is the newest frontier for financial criminals, harder to trace than traditional offshore accounts. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd been invited to dinner but had been sitting silently in shock, suddenly spoke up. I saw Emma at Raquel's apartment building 3 weeks ago, the day before the family meeting Raquel witnessed. I straightened. What when? Early morning around 6. I was walking Buddy and saw her coming out of the building. She had keys, which I thought was odd since you two weren't close. She was carrying a box. My mind raced. She must have made copies of my keys somehow, planted the fake evidence she showed everyone, or removed real evidence that would have exposed her, Agent Mitchell suggested. We'll need to sweep your apartment for surveillance devices. The thought of Emma in my private space potentially planting bugs or cameras made my skin crawl, but it explained how she'd known so much about my movements, my plans to visit Patricia Hartman. I have security cameras, I remembered suddenly. Building management installed them last year. They keep footage for 30 days. Agent Mitchell assigned an officer to retrieve the footage immediately. If we could prove Emma had broken into my apartment, It would add breaking and entering to her growing list of charges. Uncle Carl's wife Patricia, not to be confused with Aunt Patricia, raised her hand next. I work at Wells Fargo in the mortgage department. Emma applied for a home equity loan on your mother's house last month. My mother gasped. What I never authorized that... The application was withdrawn before processing, Patricia clarified. But she had all the necessary documents, deed tax records, even what looked like your signature. I flagged it as suspicious because I knew you hadn't mentioned renovations. But Emma called and said it was a mistake that she'd clicked the wrong button online. She was testing, Agent Mitchell said grimly, seeing if she could forge documents well enough to pass bank scrutiny. If your sister-in-law hadn't known the family personally, she would have stolen my house. My mother finished looking ill. The doorbell rang again, and everyone tensed, but it was Linda the nurse from Grandma's facility accompanied by 2 colleagues. We heard about the arrest, Linda said. We want to help. Rose was special to us and what Emma did. She shook her head. We've brought our personal notes, things we couldn't put in official reports but documented anyway. The nurses spread out their evidence. Detailed logs of Emma's visits, medications she claimed to bring for Grandma that were never registered with the facility time she was caught in restricted areas. She tried to get into the medication room once, one nurse Jennifer revealed, said she was looking for the bathroom, but the bathroom is clearly marked in the opposite direction. What medications would have been in there? I asked, dreading the answer. Morphine, fentanyl, other controlled substances. We reported it to management, but since nothing was taken, Jennifer shrugged helplessly. We increased security after that. My blood ran cold. Had Emma been planning to steal drugs to hasten Grandma's death, or worse, to use on other victims? As the evening wore on, more truth emerged from unexpected corners. The mailman mentioned Emma intercepting packages addressed to me. The lawn service noticed her removing items from my mother's garage during their weekly visits. Even the pastor from Emma's church called to report suspicious activity with the charity funds she managed. Each revelation painted a darker picture of Emma's crimes, but also highlighted something beautiful. How many people had noticed something wrong, had tried in small ways to document or question it. We hadn't been as alone or blind as Emma had made us feel. This is remarkable, Agent Mitchell told me privately as the evening wound down. Usually, in cases like this, family members are completely isolated with no support system. But your grandmother built a network of observers without even realizing it. Every person who cared about her became a witness. I thought about Grandma Rose, how she'd treated everyone from nurses to neighbors with kindness and respect. That kindness was now paying dividends as those people stepped forward to ensure justice for her. She always said relationships were the real wealth, I murmured. I guess she was protecting us even in ways she didn't plan. As people began to leave, each promised to provide formal statements, share evidence, testify if needed. The family that had voted me out just hours ago now stood united against the real threat. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart sank, expecting another threat from Emma's associates, but the message surprised me. Ms. Richardson, my name is Tracy Chen, Emma's college roommate. I heard about her arrest on the news. I've been waiting 20 years for this day. I have evidence from back then, recordings, documents, photos. She destroyed my family, but I never stopped gathering proof. Can we meet? I showed the message to Agent Mitchell, who nodded approvingly. The more historical evidence, the better. Emma Richardson's crime spree is unraveling, and every thread leads to more victims ready to speak up. As I looked around the room at family and friends still processing the day's revelations, I realized something profound. Emma had tried to isolate me, paint me as the enemy, remove my support system. Instead, she'd activated an army of allies I didn't even know I had. The truth had set more than just me free. It had liberated everyone who'd been carrying suspicions, guilt, and evidence they didn't know mattered. Together, we were building a case that would ensure Emma never hurt another family again. The house had grown quiet as the FBI and police finished their work. Only immediate family remained scattered around the living room in a rough circle that felt worlds different from the intervention setup they'd created just 2 days ago. The same furniture, the same people, but everything had fundamentally changed. Uncle Carl stood up slowly, his accountant's mind having processed the financial devastation Emma had wrought. He cleared his throat, commanding the attention of the exhausted family. "I motion we take a new vote," he announced formally, "all in favor of Emma being removed from this family." The response was immediate and unanimous. Every hand shot up without hesitation. My mother's trembling, Jake's firm, Sarah's tear-stained but determined. Even the teenagers, Tyler and Megan, raised their hands with grim understanding of their aunt's betrayal. "Motion carried," Carl said unnecessarily. "Unanimous decision. Emma Richardson is no longer recognized as a member of this family." "You can't vote me out," Emma's voice erupted from Jake's phone. He'd accidentally left the police station's holding area on speaker when checking earlier messages. We could hear her shrieking in the background. "I'm blood! You can't erase blood!" Jake immediately ended the call, but Emma's words hung in the air like poison. "She's right about one thing," my mother said quietly. "We can't erase blood. She'll always be my daughter, your sister, but family is more than DNA. It's trust, love, protection. She violated all of that." "She was gonna kill you, Mom," Jake said bluntly. "That notebook outlined your murder. She forfeited any claim to family when she planned that." Marcus, who'd been silent since returning from calling his sister, spoke up. "My therapist told me something that might help. She said abusers often weaponize family bonds. They count on but family to excuse their crimes. Real family doesn't systematically destroy each other for profit." Sarah was crying again, but her voice was steady. "We voted Raquel out based on lies. We cheered at casting out the one person who truly protected Grandma. How do we come back from that?" "We can't undo it," I said, finding my voice. "But you're doing the right thing now. That matters." "Does it?" Aunt Dorothy asked, wringing her hands. "We were so quick to believe Emma, so eager to see you as the villain. What does that say about us?" "It says Emma was a master manipulator who knew exactly which buttons to push," I replied. "She spent years studying each of you, learning your fears and insecurities. She used that knowledge against you. That's not your fault." "But we should have questioned it," Jake insisted. "The evidence she showed us. Looking back, it was obviously fabricated. The email sounded nothing like you. The supposed psychiatric evaluation was clearly fake. We wanted to believe her." "Why?" I asked gently. "What made her story so believable?" The family exchanged uncomfortable glances before my mother answered, "Because it was easier than the alternative. Believing you were manipulating Grandma meant we didn't have to feel guilty about not visiting more. It justified our absence." The painful honesty landed like a blow, but it was necessary. "I visited twice a month," Aunt Patricia admitted. "I told myself it was enough. When Emma said you were hovering, controlling Grandma, it made me feel better about my twice-monthly visits." "I managed her finances but rarely saw her," Uncle Carl added. "Emma's story that you were after money absolved me of guilt over prioritizing work over family." One by one, they confessed their complicity. Not in Emma's crimes, but in the willingness to believe lies that excused their own shortcomings. It was painful, but cathartic truth burning away the comfortable deceptions they'd lived with. This is what Emma counted on, I realized aloud. She didn't just manipulate facts, she manipulated guilt. She gave everyone permission to feel better about their choices by making me the villain. Young Tyler, who'd been processing everything with the intense focus of a 16-year-old discovering adult complexities, raised his hand tentatively. "Aunt Raquel, I need to apologize. Not just for believing Aunt Emma, but for how I treated you." "Tyler, you don't need to." "Yes, I do," his voice cracked. "At Christmas last year, you tried to give me a gift. A book you thought I'd like based on our conversation at Thanksgiving. I refused it. said I didn't take gifts from people who upset Grandma. Aunt Emma was standing right there smiling. She coached you, I said gently. That wasn't your fault. But I knew it hurt you. I saw your face, and I felt powerful, like I was protecting the family. Aunt Emma praised me afterward, said I was brave. Tyler's shame was palpable. I was cruel to you because it made me feel important. His honesty opened another floodgate. Megan talked about spreading rumors at family gatherings, whispering Emma's lies to cousins. Sarah admitted to deliberately scheduling events when she knew I couldn't attend. Jake revealed he'd been documenting my suspicious behavior in a notebook Emma had given him. She turned us into her surveillance network, Jake said with disgust. Every family gathering she'd debrief us. What did Raquel say? How long did she stay? Who did she talk to? We thought we were protecting Grandma. You were being groomed, Agent Mitchell interjected from the kitchen where she was finalizing reports. Financial predators often recruit family members as unwitting accomplices. It provides cover and divides potential opposition. The weight of collective guilt was suffocating, but Marcus, understanding manipulation better than anyone, offered perspective. When I discovered what Emma had done to my family, I hated myself more than her initially. How could I not see it? How could I be so stupid? But my therapist explained that shame is what keeps victims silent. Emma counted on that shame. Oh, so what do we do? My mother asked. How do we move forward? We rebuild, I said simply. Not the family we were. That family was built on Emma's lies. We build something new based on truth. But how can you forgive us? Sarah asked. We voted you out of the family. We celebrated it. How do you move past that? I thought carefully before responding. I'm hurt. Deeply hurt. That won't disappear overnight. But I also understand you were victims too. Emma didn't just steal money. She stole relationships, trust, time we can't get back. Being angry at her victims doesn't help anyone heal. We don't deserve your forgiveness, my mother said. It's not about deserving, I replied. It's about choosing. I choose not to let Emma's poison continue spreading. That means working toward forgiveness even when it's hard. Uncle Carl, ever practical, shifted to concrete steps. We need family therapy, all of us. We need to understand how this happened and how to prevent it happening again. Yes, and financial counseling, Patrick added. Emma's crimes have implications for everyone's finances, credit, and legal standing. I know someone, Marcus offered, a therapist who specializes in financial abuse and family trauma. She's been helping me understand what happened. As they discussed practical steps, I noticed something shift in the room's energy. The family that had been united in false purpose against me was now genuinely unified in facing truth. It was messy and painful, but it was real. There's something else, my mother said suddenly. The house. Emma convinced me to add her name to the deed last year, said it would simplify things if something happened to me. We'll need to address that legally, Patricia Hartman said, making notes. Given the evidence of fraud and coercion, we should be able to reverse it. She was positioning herself to take everything, Uncle Carl realized. The theft from Grandma was just the beginning. She planned to work through the entire family. Like a parasite, Jake said bitterly, moving from host to host. The vote reversal, while symbolic, had practical implications too. Emma would be formally removed from all family trusts, wills, and legal documents. Her children, innocent in their mother's crimes, would be protected through separate guardianships. What about Tyler? Megan asked about Emma's son, her cousin. He doesn't know yet, does he? He's with Marcus's sister, Marcus confirmed. We agreed it was better he hear from family than see it on the news. But that conversation? He shuddered at the thought. We'll support him, Jake said firmly. He's not responsible for his mother's crimes. We won't let him suffer for them. It was a marked contrast to how quickly they'd been willing to cast me out. Perhaps that was growth, or perhaps it was guilt. Either way, it was progress. As midnight approached, exhaustion weighed on everyone, but there was one more thing that needed addressing. The trust Grandma left, I began. The properties, the assets Emma tried to steal. I want you all to know I'm not keeping it all. Raquel, no, my mother protested. Mother left it to you for a reason. She knew you'd protect it. And I will, but protecting it doesn't mean hoarding it. Grandma built that wealth for family security. Emma perverted that intention, but I won't. I looked around the room. We'll create a family trust properly managed with oversight and transparency. Everyone benefits, but no one can exploit it. You don't have to do that, Uncle Carl said. Legally, morally, that money is yours. Legal and moral aren't always the same thing, I countered. Grandma protected the assets from Emma, not from family. There's a difference. The gratitude in the room was palpable, but I wasn't finished. There are conditions. Family therapy isn't optional. Financial transparency is required, and we create a board of trustees including members from outside the family. Never again will one person have the power Emma accumulated. Checks and balances. Patrick approved. Like a corporation, but for family assets. Exactly. Emma thrived in secrecy and blind trust. We counter that with openness and verification. As the family began to disperse, each member stopped to speak with me privately. Some apologized again, others simply squeezed my hand. The teenagers hugged me for the first time in over a year. My mother was last standing in the doorway of my childhood home. I failed you, she said simply. I failed Mother. I failed as a parent to both daughters, enabling one's evil, abandoning one's goodness. You were manipulated, Mom. Emma spent years perfecting her approach. She knew exactly how to play you. But I should have been stronger, should have seen... She trailed off, then straightened with sudden resolve. I will be now. Whatever legal proceedings, whatever testimony needed, I'll be there. It's the least I can do. After she went inside, I stood on the porch where hours earlier a security guard had tried to bar my entry. The same stars shone overhead, but everything else had changed. The family that had voted me out no longer existed. In its place was something rawer but more honest, a group of people bound by shared trauma and the difficult work of rebuilding. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Hartman. Initial federal charges filed. Emma's being transferred to federal custody tomorrow. Bail denied due to flight risk. This is just the beginning. I thought of Emma in her cell, still screaming about blood rights and family bonds she'd systematically destroyed. She'd counted on those bonds to protect her, even as she severed them for profit. The irony would be lost on her. Narcissists rarely recognize their own contradictions. The vote to remove her from the family was symbolic, yes, but symbols mattered. The family that had cheered my exile now stood united in rejecting the real threat. It wasn't perfect justice. Nothing could undo the pain caused, but it was a start. Tomorrow would bring legal proceedings, media attention, and the slow work of rebuilding trust. Tonight, though, I allowed myself a moment of quiet victory. Not over Emma, she'd destroyed herself, but over the temptation to let her poison spread, to respond to betrayal with more betrayal. Grandma Rose had taught me that family wasn't just blood, it was choice. The family had made the wrong choice 2 days ago. Tonight, they'd chosen better. It would take time to fully trust that choice, but for now it was enough. As I walked to my car, I noticed Mrs. Chen watching from her window. She gave me a small wave and a thumbs up. Even at midnight, the network of support Grandma had unknowingly built was still watching, still caring. Emma had tried to isolate me, but she'd only revealed how connected I truly was. That was perhaps the greatest reversal of all. After everyone else had left, my mother and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the untouched Thanksgiving feast. The turkey had long gone cold, the carefully prepared sides congealed and forgotten. She moved mechanically, covering dishes with plastic wrap, unable to meet my eyes. "Leave it, Mom," I said gently. "It can wait." She set down the cranberry sauce and finally looked at me. In the harsh kitchen light, she seemed to have aged a decade in just hours. Her face, usually carefully maintained with expensive creams Emma had probably bought with stolen money, showed every line of worry and regret. "How could I not see it?" she whispered, sinking into a chair. "My own daughter. I carried her for 9 months, raised her for 18 years, loved her for 43. How could I not know what she was?" I poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot someone had made earlier, adding the cream and 2 sugars she preferred, a detail Emma probably never bothered to remember. We sat across from each other at the same table where she'd taught me to read, helped with homework, and shared countless family meals. "Tell me about Emma as a child," I said. "Not the version she presented, but what you actually remember." My mother wrapped her hands around the warm mug, gathering her thoughts. "She was brilliant. Walked early, talked early, read by age 3. Everyone said I was lucky to have such a gifted child." "But," I prompted, "but she was calculating, even as a toddler. She'd watch people study them. Your father used to joke she was cataloging our weaknesses." Her voice broke. "Maybe it wasn't a joke." She pulled out her phone, scrolling to old photos. "Look at this. Emma's 5th birthday party. See how she's arranged everyone." She spent an hour organizing who stood where, who held what. Said it had to be perfect. I studied the photo. Even at 5, Emma's need for control was evident. She stood in the center beaming while other children were positioned like chess pieces around her. "When you were born," my mother continued, "she was 8, old enough to help to be the big sister. Instead, she saw you as competition. I told myself it was normal sibling rivalry." "What did she do?" "Small things. Pinching you when I wasn't looking, then comforting you when you cried so she looked caring. Hiding your favorite toys and finding them to be the hero. I caught her once putting soap in your bottle, said she was trying to clean it." The pattern had started that early. "What did Dad think?" My mother's face crumpled. "Your father saw it clearer than I did. He wanted Emma in therapy, said something wasn't right. We fought about it constantly. I accused him of not loving his own daughter, of playing favorites with you." "Is that why he left?" I'd always wondered about my parents' divorce when I was 10. "Partly. He said he couldn't watch me enable Emma anymore. Couldn't watch her manipulate and hurt you while I made excuses." She laughed bitterly. "I told him he was paranoid, that he was the one hurting our family. I chose Emma over him, just like I chose her over you. He tried to maintain contact with us," I remembered, "but it got harder and harder. Emma made sure of that. She'd intercept his calls, delete his emails. Told me he was trying to turn you against me. By the time I realized she was lying, he'd remarried and moved to Seattle. He sent letters for years, but Emma?" She trailed off. "She destroyed them. She showed me selective parts, lines taken out of context that seemed threatening or cruel. I believed her. God help me, I always believed her." I reached across the table, taking her weathered hand. "She was your daughter. Believing in your child isn't a character flaw. But I sacrificed everyone else for that belief. You, your father, even your grandparents." She pulled out a tissue, dabbing her eyes. "Do you know, Emma convinced me your grandmother was showing signs of dementia 2 years before she actually declined, said we needed to start managing her affairs. That's when she got power of attorney. Partial. I insisted on being co-agent, which probably saved us from complete ruin. But she had enough access to start her theft." My mother stood, abruptly pacing the kitchen. "I need to show you something." She left and returned with a box I recognized, the family photo albums she'd always treasured, but as she opened it, I realized pages were missing. "Emma edited our history," she said, "removed photos that didn't fit her narrative. Pictures of you with Grandma, your father, with you, even some of her own childhood where she looked less than perfect." We went through album after album, finding gaps, torn pages, missing memories. The systematic erasure of anything that contradicted Emma's version of family history was chilling. But I have copies, my mother said, suddenly pulling out her tablet. Digital backups I made years ago. Emma didn't know about these. She showed me the complete photos. Emma scowling as I blew out birthday candles. Emma pushing me off a swing. Emma's face twisted with rage as Grandma held me instead of her. The real history Emma had tried to delete. I see it all now, my mother said. Every manipulation, every lie. She played me like an instrument, and I was so eager to dance to her tune. Why, I asked, what made her story so appealing? My mother considered this carefully, because she made me feel like a good mother. She praised my parenting, said I'd raised her to be successful. When she achieved things, she credited me. You were independent, didn't need me as much. Emma made me feel essential. She love-bombed you, I realized. Classic manipulation tactic, while systematically undermining my relationship with everyone else. She'd point out your father's flaws, highlight your independence as rejection, interpret Grandma's advice as criticism. She isolated me as thoroughly as she did Marcus. The parallel was stark. Mother and son-in-law both trapped in Emma's web, both blind to their isolation until forced to see. The vitamins, my mother said suddenly. She started giving them to me 6 months ago. Said they were for mental clarity, that she'd noticed me becoming forgetful. We'll have them tested, I assured her, but you should see a doctor regardless. Make sure there's no lasting damage. The damage is done, she said quietly. Not physical, emotional. I let her poison me against my own mother, my own daughter. I stood in that living room 3 days ago and voted to exile you from the family. How do I live with that? By doing better, I said firmly, by learning from it, by making sure it never happens again. But the guilt will eat you alive if you let it. Emma would win if guilt destroys you too. You want to make amends, live, be present, be the mother and grandmother you couldn't be while under her influence. She looked at me with wonder. How are you so wise, so forgiving? I had a good teacher, I said, thinking of Grandma Rose. She taught me that holding on to anger only gives the person who hurt you more power. Emma's taken enough. She doesn't get my future, too. We sat in silence for a while, processing the weight of shared truth. Then my mother spoke again, her voice stronger. I need to tell you about the family meeting, the one you saw through the window. I braced myself for details I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. Emma had a PowerPoint, professional quality with graphs and charts. She'd been preparing for months, maybe years. She presented evidence of your crimes like a prosecutor, financial records showing large deposits to your account that she claimed came from Grandma, emails discussing inheritance, even a psychological profile suggesting you had antisocial personality disorder. All fabricated, every bit. But it was so comprehensive, so detailed. She'd thought of every question, had an answer for every doubt. When Uncle Carl questioned a bank statement, she had supporting documents. When Aunt Dorothy wondered about the emails, Emma had explanations for the technical details. She'd done this before, I said, with other families. She knew exactly what objections to expect. She played us all. Gave Jake the financial angle since he's always worried about money. Told Sarah you'd threatened their children's college funds. Convinced the aunts you were planning to put me in a home to get the house. Divide and conquer. Give everyone a personal reason to fear me. My mother nodded. The vote was unanimous. Everyone was so relieved when you were exposed. We actually applauded, celebrated casting out the one person who truly loved Grandma. Did anyone defend me? Stephanie started to mention seeing you at the care facility, but Emma had an explanation ready. You only visited when you knew people would see you performing devotion for witnesses. My mother's voice turned bitter. We wanted to believe her. It absolved us of our own neglect. You weren't neglectful, Mom. You were busy, had your own life. Stop. She held up her hand. Don't make excuses for me. I visited my mother once a month when she lived 20 minutes away. You went daily. That's not being busy. That's choosing priorities, and I prioritized everything else over her. The harsh self-assessment was painful but necessary. Truth had to come before healing. I found more, she said, pulling out her phone. After Emma was arrested, I went through our text messages. Look at this pattern. She showed me exchanges spanning years. Every time my mother mentioned visiting Grandma, Emma had a crisis. Every planned lunch with me was met with Emma needing urgent help. The manipulation was so consistent, it was almost algorithmic. She programmed me, my mother realized, trained me like a dog, reward contact with her, punish contact with others. And I let her. You couldn't see it from inside. That's how psychological manipulation works. But you saw it. Your father saw it. Grandma saw it. Why couldn't I? Because Emma studied you her whole life. She knew exactly which buttons to push, which needs to fulfill, which fears to exploit. You weren't weak, Mom. You were targeted by a predator who happened to share your DNA. My mother stood again, moving to the window where she'd watched countless family gatherings. 23 people were here today. My family, my blood, my chosen relatives. And they all believed I'd raised a monster without questioning why. They believed Emma's performance, just like you did. No, they judged me. I could see it in their eyes after the arrest. How could Diane not know? How could she enable this? Their right to judge. Judgment without compassion helps no one. I said, yes, there will be consequences. Yes, people will talk, but you can't control their reactions. You can only control your own actions going forward. What actions? How do I move forward from this? Weeks. First, see a doctor about those vitamins. Then, a therapist who understands manipulation and financial abuse. After that, we take it day by day. Rebuild trust slowly. Make amends where possible. Will you help me? Her voice was small, vulnerable. I'll try, but I need boundaries. I need therapy, too. We both do. Family therapy, individual therapy, maybe support groups. This isn't something we fix with good intentions. I understand. She returned to the table, sitting heavily. I've been thinking about Grandma's letter, the one you read at dinner. She knew I'd enabled Emma, didn't she? She knew Emma had manipulated you. There's a difference. Is there I'm the parent. I was supposed to protect both my children, guide them, teach them right from wrong. Instead, I created a monster and sacrificed my good daughter to feed it. Emma's choices were her own, I insisted. You didn't make her steal. You didn't make her lie, forge, manipulate. Those were her decisions. But I made them possible. Every excuse I made, every blind eye I turned every time I chose her version over truth. I enabled those choices. We sat with that truth between us, heavy and undeniable. Outside, the November night grew colder, frost forming on the windows. Inside, years of frozen emotions were finally thawing. I want to see my granddaughter, my mother said suddenly. I blinked in confusion. What granddaughter? The one you'll have someday, the family you'll build. I want to be part of it, but I know I have to earn that right. She met my eyes with newfound determination. I won't make the same mistakes. I won't enable, won't excuse, won't choose favorites. I'll be the mother and grandmother I should have been all along. That's a future worth working toward. I agreed, but it starts with today, with choosing truth over comfortable lies. No more lies, she agreed, no matter how painful the truth. As if to test that commitment, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but she answered on speaker. Mrs. Richardson. This is Derek Hoffman's attorney. My client wants to make a deal. He has information about Emma's activities, including evidence of other families she's targeted. He's willing to testify in exchange for immunity. My mother looked at me, then spoke firmly. He can speak to the FBI. Emma's crimes need to be fully exposed regardless of who else is implicated. After she hung up, I felt a shift in the air. My mother had just chosen justice over protecting Emma, truth over family reputation. It was a small step, but a significant one. I'm proud of you, I told her. She shook her head. Don't be proud yet. I have a lifetime of mistakes to atone for, but maybe I can start making things right. We began cleaning the kitchen together, packing away the ruined Thanksgiving dinner. But something else was being cleared away too. Years of deception enabling and misplaced loyalty. In its place, tentatively, was the possibility of an honest relationship. It wouldn't be easy. Trust once broken was difficult to rebuild. But as I watched my mother carefully save the sweet potato casserole I'd brought, the dish Emma had asked for as part of her manipulation, I saw hope. Next Thanksgiving, she said quietly, we'll do better. Yes, I agreed. We will. The night stretched ahead, full of legal challenges and emotional reckonings. But for now, in this kitchen, where so many family dramas had played out, two women were choosing honesty over harmony, difficult truth over comfortable lies. It was a start. In the weeks following that catastrophic Thanksgiving, the full scope of Emma's crimes unfolded like a toxic flower blooming in slow motion. Each day brought new revelations, more victims, and deeper understanding of the systematic destruction she'd wrought across multiple states. The first week of December arrived with a snowstorm and a flood of legal documents. I sat in Patricia Hartman's conference room surrounded by FBI agents, federal prosecutors, and investigators from 3 different states. The mahogany table that had held Grandma's trust documents now groaned under the weight of evidence against Emma. We've identified 47 victims so far, Agent Mitchell announced, sliding a thick folder across to me, dating back to her college years. Your sister didn't just stumble into elder fraud, she made it her career. I opened the folder to find face after face of elderly victims, each with their own story of trust betrayed. Margaret Chen from California, robbed of her retirement savings. Robert Williams from Arizona, whose family still believed he'd gambled away their inheritance. Dorothy Simpson from Nevada, who died thinking her grandchildren hated her because of Emma's forged letters. The network she was part of called themselves the Inheritors. Agent Mitchell continued, they shared techniques through encrypted channels, recommended vulnerable targets, even had a mentorship program for new recruits. Mentorship. I couldn't hide my disgust. Your sister was considered one of their stars. She'd written guides on family manipulation, created templates for forged documents, even conducted online workshops on identifying wealthy elderly targets with family conflicts. The scope was staggering. What I thought was personal betrayal was actually professional criminality dressed in family clothing. Marcus arrived late, looking haggard but determined. The divorce papers in his hand told their own story. My lawyer says the prenup is void due to fraud, he announced, but it doesn't matter. There's nothing to divide except debt. How bad? Patricia asked gently. $800,000 in my name. Another $400 in joint accounts, plus the mortgage on a house that's worth less than we owe. He laughed bitterly. I'm 43 years old and financially ruined. We're working on restitution, Gloria Chen from the DA's office assured him. The frozen offshore accounts contain roughly $4 million. Victims will receive compensation, though it won't cover everything stolen. It's not about the money anymore, Marcus said. I spoke to my mother's hospice. The nurses recorded her last words. She wanted me to know she forgave me, that she knew something was wrong. She died believing I'd eventually see the truth. His voice broke on the last words. I reached over to squeeze his shoulder, understanding too well the weight of missed opportunities for reconciliation. The meeting continued with updates on the criminal case. Emma had been denied bail after investigators discovered she'd booked flights to countries without extradition treaties. Her lawyer was already floating plea deals, but the federal prosecutor seemed unmoved. She's looking at 25 to life, Gloria stated flatly. The elder abuse alone carries severe penalties, but combined with wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy charges, she won't see freedom for decades. What about her son? I asked. Tyler was 15, old enough to understand his world was collapsing. "He's with my sister in Portland," Marcus replied. "We're setting up therapy, trying to minimize the trauma. He keeps asking if his college fund is safe. I don't have the heart to tell him it never existed." After the meeting, I drove to my apartment through Denver's snowy streets. The building manager met me in the lobby with security footage from the past month. There was Emma, clear as day, entering my apartment with copied keys. 3 separate occasions, always when she knew I'd be at work. "She installed something." The manager pointed to the timestamp. "See that bag? She came in with it, full, left with it empty." The subsequent search of my apartment revealed the violation's extent. Tiny cameras in the bedroom and living room, a keystroke logger on my computer, audio recorders in the kitchen and bathroom. She'd been surveilling me for months, gathering information to destroy me. "This is beyond theft," the detective assigned to this aspect of the case said. "This is stalking, invasion of privacy, criminal surveillance. Each device is a separate felony charge." But the surveillance had backfired. The devices had uploaded to a cloud server, and the FBI's tech team had gained access. Hours of footage showed me living my quiet life, working, reading, talking to grandma on the phone. Nothing salacious or incriminating, just the mundane reality Emma had tried to twist into something sinister. "She must have been furious," Patricia mused. "All that effort to find dirt, and you gave her nothing." The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma's desperate search for my sins had only highlighted her own. As December progressed, the family began the difficult work of rebuilding. The first therapy session was particularly brutal. Dr. Sarah Winters, who specialized in family trauma and financial abuse, didn't pull punches. "You're all victims," she said, looking around the circle of uncomfortable relatives. "But you're also complicit. Understanding that duality is crucial for healing." Jake bristled. "We were lied to. How is that complicity?" "Because you chose to believe lies that served your interests," Dr. Winters replied calmly. "Each of you gained something from viewing Raquel as the villain. We need to explore what you gained and why you were willing to sacrifice her for it." The session was excruciating but necessary. Mom admitted she'd preferred Emma's dramatic devotion to my quiet love. Jake revealed he'd resented my close relationship with Grandma because it highlighted his absence. Sarah confessed she'd been jealous of my financial stability, and Emma's lies made her feel less guilty about it. "Emma didn't create these feelings," Dr. Winters observed. "She exploited existing tensions. The question is, what do you do with these truths now?" The answer varied by family member. Uncle Carl threw himself into creating the transparent family trust I'd suggested. His accounting expertise, once used peripherally, now became central to protecting family assets. He instituted monthly reviews, external audits, and a system of checks and balances that would have prevented Emma's theft. "Never again," he said firmly as he presented the structure. "No single person will have unchecked access to family resources." Aunt Dorothy channeled her guilt into advocacy. She began volunteering at the Elder Abuse Prevention Center, sharing our story as a cautionary tale. Her church connections proved valuable in spreading awareness about financial predators targeting seniors. "If one family avoids what we experienced, it's worth the embarrassment," she told me after a particularly emotional speaking engagement. Jake and Sarah took a different approach. They began visiting nursing homes not as volunteers, but as advocates. They'd learned the warning signs and made themselves available to families noticing suspicious behavior. Within a month, they'd helped identify 2 potential fraud cases. "We can't undo what we did to you," Sarah explained, "but maybe we can prevent others from suffering similarly." The teenagers, Tyler and Megan, started a social media campaign about elder fraud. Their TikTok videos explaining the warning signs went viral, reaching millions of young people who might spot exploitation of their grandparents. It was modern activism, born from painful experience. But the most significant change came from my mother. She committed fully to therapy, attending individual sessions twice a week, plus our family meetings. The vitamins Emma had given her tested positive for benzodiazepines, not enough to cause serious harm, but sufficient to maintain a compliant fog. She was preparing me, Mom realized during one session, making me easier to manipulate for when she made her final move. The detox was difficult, but as the drugs left her system, her natural sharpness returned. She began documenting everything she remembered about Emma's behavior, creating a timeline that proved valuable for prosecutors. No detail was too small. Every lie, every manipulation, every red flag she'd ignored. I was her test subject, she concluded. She practiced on family before targeting strangers. Marcus's journey was perhaps the most difficult. Beyond financial ruin, he faced the complete dissolution of his identity. Everything he'd believed about his life was false. His wife was a criminal, his marriage a con, his isolation deliberate abuse. I don't even know who I am anymore, he confessed during a support group for financial abuse victims. For 8 years, I was Emma's husband. Now I'm just empty. His reconnection with family helped. His sister Kelly flew in from Portland bringing photo albums and stories of the Marcus who existed before Emma. Slowly, painfully, he began rebuilding his sense of self. "You're a survivor," Kelly told him firmly. "Not a victim, a survivor." The financial restitution process moved slowly. Federal asset forfeiture laws meant the government seized Emma's offshore accounts, but distributing funds to victims across multiple jurisdictions proved complex. I worked with Patricia to ensure Grandma's estate was fully restored, first, then focused on helping other victims navigate the bureaucracy. "Why are you helping us?" Margaret Chen asked during a video call. She was the roommate's grandmother Emma had defrauded 20 years ago. "Your family got justice. Why care about strangers?" "Because Emma made you all family," I replied, "connected by shared violation. Grandma would want me to help everyone heal, not just ourselves." By mid-December, Emma's network began unraveling. The woman who'd mentored her in college was arrested in Florida. 3 other inheritors were caught in a coordinated raid across state lines. Each arrest brought more evidence, more victims, more understanding of how organizational elderly fraud had become. Derek Hoffman, Emma's accomplice and lover, flipped completely. His testimony revealed Emma had been planning to fake her own death and resurface with a new identity in Brazil. The elaborate scheme included staged accident plans and even a body double, a homeless woman whose corpse Emma intended to use. "She wasn't just evil," Agent Mitchell told me privately. "She was escalating toward murder. You stopped a killer, not just a thief." The preliminary hearing after Christmas was a media circus. Emma appeared in orange jumpsuit and shackles, her carefully maintained appearance crumbling. She'd aged years and weeks, the stress of exposure eating at her like acid. But her eyes, when they met mine across the courtroom, still burned with narcissistic rage. She'd refused all plea deals, insisting on her innocence despite overwhelming evidence. Her new attorney, the previous one, had quit, tried arguing mental illness, claiming Emma suffered from a personality disorder that compelled her crimes. Even if true, the judge responded, mental illness doesn't excuse systematic fraud spanning decades. The defendant clearly knew her actions were wrong, given the elaborate concealment methods. Emma was remanded to federal custody pending trial. As court officers led her away, she turned to our section. "You'll regret this," she mouthed at me. "All of you." But the threat felt empty. She had no power left, no manipulation remaining. Just a broken woman facing decades in prison for choosing greed over family. Outside the courthouse, our family stood together facing reporters. Mom, growing stronger each day, spoke for us all. "We share this story as a warning. Elder fraud often comes from within families. Don't let love blind you to exploitation. Verify, question, protect your vulnerable loved ones. We failed once. We won't fail again. The cameras captured our united front, but I knew the deeper truth. We stood together because we'd been torn apart. Our unity came from understanding how easily it could be destroyed. Trust had been rebuilt on foundations of verification rather than blind faith. That evening, we held a small memorial for Grandma Rose. Not a funeral, we'd had that, but a celebration of her wisdom and foresight. The trust she'd created had saved not just assets, but our entire family from complete destruction. To Grandma Rose, I toasted, raising a glass of her favorite sherry, who loved us enough to see clearly. And to Raquel, Mom added, surprising me, who had the courage to expose the truth. We drank to truth, to justice, to the painful process of rebuilding. Outside, snow fell softly on Denver, covering the city in pristine white. But we knew better than to trust beautiful surfaces now. We'd learned to look deeper, to question more, to verify always. The healing would take years. The scars would remain. But we'd survived Emma's betrayal and emerged more honest, if sadder. In the end, that was Grandma's true gift. Not the money or properties, but the forced reckoning that made us a real family at last. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed with a message from another of Emma's victims, thanking me for my help with restitution forms. Then another from a family who'd recognized warning signs in time because of our story. Then one from Tyler asking if he could spend spring break with me to learn about his grandmother he'd never really known. Each message was a small victory against Emma's legacy of destruction. She'd tried to destroy families, but instead had created an unlikely community of survivors. We'd found each other in the wreckage and chosen to rebuild together. That was the ultimate consequence of Emma's crimes. Not just her imprisonment, but the bonds forged between those she'd tried to break. Love had triumphed over greed, truth over deception, family over fraud. It wasn't the Thanksgiving any of us had planned, but perhaps it was the one we'd needed. The week before Emma's trial was scheduled to begin, Patricia Hartman called with an urgency in her voice I'd never heard before. Raquel, you need to come to my office immediately. I've discovered something in your grandmother's documents that changes everything. I arrived to find Patricia's conference room transformed into what looked like a historical archive. Bankers' boxes lined the walls, and the mahogany table was covered with yellowed documents, photographs, and leather-bound journals. After Emma's arrest, I did a complete review of your grandmother's papers. Patricia began, her usual composure cracked with excitement. I found a safety deposit box we didn't know about. It was registered under her maiden name, Rose Catherine Murphy. Murphy, I thought her maiden name was Mitchell. That's what everyone thought. But Rose Mitchell was itself a chosen name. Your grandmother had an entire life before she became the woman we knew. Patricia handed me a worn passport. Rose Catherine Murphy, born in County Cork, Ireland, 1934. My hands trembled as I opened the passport. A young woman's face stared back. Unmistakably Grandma, but decades younger with eyes that held secrets I was only beginning to understand. She immigrated to America in 1957, Patricia continued. But not as a simple Irish girl seeking opportunity. She was running from something or someone. Patricia spread out newspaper clippings from Irish papers. The headlines were dramatic. Murphy shipping fortune missing. Daughter of industrialist disappears. Family offers reward for Rose Murphy's return. Grandma was wealthy, I asked, struggling to process this revelation. Her father owned the second largest shipping company in Ireland. She was set to inherit millions. But she walked away from all of it, came to America with just the clothes on her back, and reinvented herself completely. Why? Patricia handed me a journal, its pages brittle with age. Read this, but prepare yourself. It explains everything about Emma. I opened to the marked page dated June 1957, written in Grandma's distinctive hand, but with the passion of youth. I've made my decision. Tomorrow I board the ship for America, leaving behind the Murphy name and all its poisoned legacy. Father thinks money excuses all sins, that wealth washes clean the blood on his hands. But I've seen the truth behind our fortune. The workers crushed beneath unsafe conditions, the families destroyed by his greed, the competitors ruined through sabotage. My brother William is worse. At 25, he's already orchestrated 3 accidents that eliminated father's rivals. He smiles as he destroys lives, counting profits over graves. Yesterday, he tried to recruit me into his schemes, said it was time I learned the family business, the real family business, not shipping but exploitation. They've raised us to be predators, teaching that others exist only to be consumed. My sisters have accepted this training, but I cannot. Tomorrow, I disappear. Let them think me dead. Better that than become what they intended. Another Murphy vampire feeding on the innocent. I'll build a new life in America. Honest work, honest money, honest love. And if I have children, I'll raise them to be everything the Murphys are not. Kind, ethical, generous. I'll break the chain of greed that's poisoned our bloodline for generations. But I know the danger. These traits run deep, possibly in the blood itself. I've seen it in the mirror sometimes. That calculating coldness, that hunger for more. I fight it daily. If I have children, I'll watch for signs. The Murphy curse ends with me. I set down the journal, my mind reeling. She knew it could be inherited. Keep reading, Patricia urged gently. There's more. The journals continued through the years, documenting Grandma's life in America. How she'd worked 3 jobs to avoid taking anything from anyone. How she'd met my grandfather at a church charity event. How she'd been terrified when she got pregnant, fearing she'd pass on the Murphy evil. An entry from 1962 caught my eye. Diane born healthy and beautiful. I watch her constantly for signs of the coldness, the calculation. So far, only normal infant selfishness. Perhaps I worried for nothing. Perhaps evil is learned, not born. I pray this is true. But as the entries progressed, her concerns grew. Emma shows troubling signs. At 4, she manipulates other children with disturbing skill. At 6, she lies with conviction that would impress her grandfather. I see William in her eyes sometimes. That same predatory assessment of others as resources to exploit. I've tried everything. Therapy, church, constant moral instruction. Nothing penetrates. It's as if she was born with a missing piece, the part that feels empathy. Diane doesn't see it. Thinks I'm too hard on Emma. But I know what I'm looking at. The Murphy curse found its way across the ocean after all. The entries became more desperate as Emma grew older. Caught Emma stealing from Diane's piggy bank again. When confronted, she blamed Raquel, who was napping at the time. The easy lie, the quick manipulation, it's all so familiar. I'm watching my father's cruelty bloom in my granddaughter. Started separate savings account for Raquel. Emma must never have access. I'll protect the innocent one from the predator, even if the predator is my blood. She documented everything, Patricia said softly. Every theft, every lie, every manipulation. She knew exactly what Emma was becoming. A folder marked confidential, open only after my death, contained the most damning evidence. Grandma had hired private investigators not just recently, but periodically throughout Emma's life. Reports from high school showed Emma running small scams on classmates. College documentation revealed the extent of her early crimes. She could have had Emma arrested years ago, I realized. Why didn't she? Patricia showed me another letter. This one dated just a year before Grandma's death. My dearest Raquel, if you're reading this, then Emma has finally crossed the line I always feared she would. I've watched and documented her descent into criminality, but I couldn't bring myself to destroy her. She is still my granddaughter, still the baby I held with such hope. My cowardice in this matter is my greatest regret. I chose family over justice, Love over law. How many has she hurt because I couldn't bear to see her imprisoned? This guilt eats at me daily. But I see now that Emma is escalating that simple theft no longer satisfies her. The Murphy blood runs too strong, so I've prepared everything you need to stop her when the time comes. I'm sorry to place this burden on you, but you have something Emma lacks: conscience. The Murphy fortune I fled still exists, held in trust in Ireland. I never claimed it, but I never renounced it either. Upon my death, it passes to my designated heir. The documentation is with solicitor James O'Brien in Dublin. The fortune is substantial, over 50 million euros at last accounting. I name you sole heir to both the American assets I built and the Irish fortune I abandoned. But with this inheritance comes responsibility. Use it to help Emma's victims. Create programs to prevent elder abuse. Build what the Murphys destroyed, a legacy of protection rather than predation. Emma must never know about the Irish money. She carries too much Murphy blood. Access to such wealth would transform her from criminal to monster. You carry the antidote: your father's gentle nature, your own kind heart, the empathy Emma lacks. Break the chain, my darling. End the Murphy curse not through denial but through action. Take their blood money and wash it clean with good works. I sat back, overwhelmed. The grandmother I thought I knew was just one layer of a complex woman who'd spent her life running from a poisoned legacy. 50 million euros. Closer to 60 with accumulated interest, Patricia confirmed. Your grandmother was the sole heir to Murphy Shipping. When she disappeared, the assets went into trust. The family searched for her for decades, but she'd covered her tracks perfectly. And now it's mine. Legally, yes. The documentation is ironclad, but there's more. Patricia pulled out a final folder. Your grandmother didn't just run from the Murphy family. She spent decades quietly undermining them. The folder contained evidence of Grandma's secret war against her birth family. Anonymous tips that led to investigations of Murphy Shipping, leaked documents exposing their criminal enterprises, funding for lawyers representing their victims. She didn't just escape, I marveled. She fought back. From the shadows, protecting her new identity while working to destroy the empire built on blood. Murphy Shipping went bankrupt in 1987. Your great-uncle William died in prison. The family fortune was seized under racketeering laws, except for Rose's portion protected by inheritance law. I found myself laughing at the irony. Emma thought she was stealing family money. She had no idea about the real fortune. And now you have a choice, Patricia said. The Irish lawyers have been trying to locate Rose Murphy's heir for years. You could claim it all tomorrow. But I was already shaking my head. Grandma was right. That money is cursed, but it can be cleaned. I thought of Marcus's debt, the victims still struggling, the programs that could be funded. We'll create the most comprehensive elder abuse prevention network in the world. Every penny will go to protecting the vulnerable. Patricia smiled. I thought you might say that. I've already drafted preliminary plans for the Rose Murphy Foundation for Elder Protection. As I reviewed the plans, another thought struck me. The family needs to know about this. Not about the money, that stays secret, but about Grandma's history, about why Emma became what she did. Are you sure it could complicate the trial? Truth is more important than convenience. They deserve to understand why Grandma watched Emma so carefully, why she protected me so fiercely. It wasn't favoritism. It was fear based on experience. That evening, I gathered the family at Mom's house. The dining room where Emma had orchestrated my expulsion now held a different kind of revelation. I read selections from Grandma's journals, showed the newspaper clippings, explained the Murphy legacy she'd fled. So Emma's evil was inherited? Jake asked, struggling with the concept. Not evil, Dr. Winters corrected. She'd joined us to help process this information. But certain personality traits have genetic components: lack of empathy, predatory behavior, Narcissistic tendencies. These can run in families. Grandma spent her life fighting her own nature, I explained, and watching for it in us. She saw it in Emma early and tried everything to change it. My mother was crying again, but differently this time. She told me once that Emma reminded her of someone from her past. I thought she meant a friend. She meant her father, her brother. The brother who killed competitors, Sarah said quietly. No wonder she was terrified when Emma started showing similar traits. But Raquel didn't inherit it, Megan observed. Neither did Mom or Uncle Jake. So it's not inevitable. No, Dr. Winters confirmed. Genetics load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. Rose created a loving environment that brought out the best in most of her descendants. Emma was an anomaly. A throwback, Uncle Carl said grimly, to the Murphys Grandma tried to leave behind. The room fell silent as we absorbed this new understanding. Emma wasn't just a criminal. She was the manifestation of Grandma's worst fears, the poison in the bloodline that had found expression despite all efforts to suppress it. What do we do with this information? Aunt Dorothy finally asked. We learn from it, I said firmly. We watch for signs in the next generation. We create environments that nurture empathy and punish exploitation. We make Grandma's choice every day to be better than our worst impulses. And the trial, Mom asked. Do we tell them about this? I'd thought about this carefully. Emma's lawyer will likely try to use it as a defense, genetic predisposition to criminality, but it won't work. Grandma had the same genes and chose goodness. Emma had every opportunity to choose differently. Nature versus nurture, Marcus said quietly. He'd been silent through the revelations, processing how he'd been targeted by someone literally bred for predation. I fell in love with a genetic psychopath. You fell in love with the mask she wore, Dr. Winters corrected gently. The real Emma was always the predator underneath. You couldn't have known. As the family discussed implications and processed emotions, I stepped onto the porch for air. The December night was crisp stars visible despite Denver's light pollution. Somewhere among those stars, Grandma's spirit watched, I was certain. She'd carried such terrible knowledge alone for so long, the fear that she'd brought evil to a new continent, the guilt of watching it flower in her granddaughter, the weight of documenting crime she couldn't bring herself to stop. But she'd also given us the tools to end it, not just the evidence against Emma, but the understanding of where it came from. The Murphy curse could end with Emma imprisoned, the fortune turned to good works the family educated about their genetic legacy. My phone buzzed with an email from James O'Brien in Dublin, confirming receipt of my instructions for the Murphy fortune. The first disbursements would go to Emma's victims, then to elder care facilities for better security, finally to research on preventing financial exploitation. Grandma, I whispered to the stars, I understand now. You didn't just leave me money, you left me a mission. The Murphys built their fortune on others' pain. We'll spend it preventing that pain. The curse ends here. Inside, I could hear my family still talking, processing, planning. They'd voted me out based on lies, but now welcomed truth no matter how painful. We were stronger for knowing our history, our vulnerabilities, our potential for both good and evil. Tomorrow would bring more revelations as the trial began. Emma would rage against exposure-claim genetic destiny as defense. But we knew better now. Grandma had shown us that Murphy blood didn't mean Murphy choices. We could choose differently. And we would. Every day in every action we would choose to be what Grandma had fled Ireland to become. Honest, kind, generous. The money she'd refused to claim would now serve the vulnerable. The family she'd protected would guard against future predators. This was the true inheritance Grandma had left. Not just wealth, but wisdom. Not just assets, but awareness. Emma had triggered its revelation through her crimes, but she wouldn't benefit from it. The Murphy fortune would flow to victims while the Murphy predator rotted in prison. It was poetic justice that Grandma would have appreciated. The curse transformed into blessing, the blood money turned to balm the predator's heritage used to protect prey. As I rejoined my family, I felt Grandma's presence strongly. She'd won in the end, not just against Emma, but against the poisoned legacy she'd spent a lifetime fleeing. Love had conquered greed, truth had exposed lies, and the Murphy curse was finally truly broken. 1 year later, Thanksgiving arrived with unusual warmth for Denver. The morning sun cast golden light through my dining room windows as I prepared for a celebration vastly different from the previous year's catastrophe. The same family would gather, but everything else had transformed. The doorbell rang at precisely 10 o'clock. Marcus stood on the porch looking healthier than I'd seen him in years. Beside him was his sister Kelly, visiting from Portland, and his mother, the woman Emma had convinced him to abandon. "Mrs. Rodriguez," I embraced the elderly woman warmly. "I'm so glad you could make it." "Please call me Isabel," she replied, tears already forming. "Thank you for bringing my son back to me." Marcus had spent the year rebuilding bridges Emma had burned. Through therapy and tremendous effort, he'd reconnected with his family, explaining the manipulation that had kept them apart. His mother, despite her advanced age and failing health, had forgiven immediately. "The dining room's through here." I guided them inside. "Fair warning, it's controlled chaos." The house I'd purchased with part of Grandma's American Trust was perfect for gatherings. Not ostentatious, Grandma would have disapproved, but spacious enough for the family that had grown closer through shared trauma. The dining room could accommodate 30 comfortably, though we'd only be 24 today. My mother emerged from the kitchen floor, dusting her cheek. "Marcus, Isabel. So wonderful to meet you, finally." The warmth was genuine. Mom had spent the year in intensive therapy working to understand how she'd been manipulated and making amends where possible. "Let me help," Kelly offered, following Mom back to the kitchen. The easy acceptance of extended family would have been impossible before. Emma's crimes had taught us that blood meant less than character. Jake arrived next with Sarah and the kids. Tyler had grown 3 inches and lost the haunted look that had plagued him after his mother's arrest. He'd spent 2 weeks with me over summer learning about the grandmother his mother had painted as a villain. Aunt Raquel Megan rushed to hug me. I brought the presentation about our prevention program. Ms. Chen said it's ready for the foundation board. At 15, Megan had become passionate about elder abuse prevention. Her social media campaign had evolved into a comprehensive educational program now being implemented in high schools across Colorado. "We'll review it after dinner," I promised. "The board meeting's Monday." Sanj? The Rose Murphy Foundation for Elder Protection had been operational for 6 months. With the Irish Fortune as its endowment, we'd already helped recover over $2 million for victims and funded security upgrades at dozens of care facilities. Stephanie arrived with her girlfriend Anna, both carrying desserts from the coffee shop where they'd met. "Linda sends her regards," Stephanie said. "She's working today, but said to thank you again for funding the new security system at the facility." Linda, Grandma's former nurse, now served as our advisory board's care facility liaison. Her insights had proved invaluable in designing protection protocols that actually worked in real-world settings. Uncle Carl and Patrick entered together, deep in discussion about the Foundation's latest financial audit. They'd become co-treasurers, implementing oversight systems that made fraud nearly impossible. Their quarterly reports were works of art in transparency. "Zero discrepancies again," Carl announced proudly. "Every penny accounted for, every transaction verified." "As it should be," Patrick added. "Never again will family finances be a black box." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Tracy Chen, Emma's first known victim from college. She'd become an unexpected friend over the past year, bonding through our shared experience. Her grandmother had passed years ago, but the foundation had helped recover some of what Emma had stolen. I brought spring rolls, she said, holding up bags of food. My grandmother's recipe. She would have loved knowing her story helped prevent others' suffering. As noon approached the house filled with family, both blood and chosen, Dr. Winters arrived. She'd become such an integral part of our healing that we'd insisted she join our celebration. Agent Mitchell, now retired from the FBI, brought her wife and their adopted daughter. Any word on the network prosecutions? Jake asked her. 17 convictions so far, Mitchell reported with satisfaction. Emma's testimony, however reluctant, has been invaluable. The inheritors are finished. Emma. Her name still caused a ripple of tension, but no longer the tsunami of emotion it once triggered. She'd been sentenced to 35 years in federal prison, eligible for parole in 25 if she completed rehabilitation programs and made full restitution. She's in therapy, Marcus mentioned quietly. The prison psychologist sends updates. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. We'd collectively decided not to abandon Emma entirely. She received letters carefully screened and basic commissary funds. Not forgiveness, that would take longer, but acknowledgement that even predators were human. Tyler asked if he could write her, Marcus added. I'm not sure. When he's 18, I suggested. Let him decide as an adult. The dining room table extended to its full length, groaned under the weight of dishes. Traditional Thanksgiving fare mixed with international contributions from our expanded family. My sweet potato casserole sat next to Isabel's tamales, Tracy's spring rolls, and Dr. Winter's unexpected contribution of pierogi. Before we eat, I stood raising my glass of sparkling cider. I like to share something. The room quieted, everyone finding seats. The scene was so different from last year. Faces open and trusting rather than accusatory unity, born from truth rather than deception. I pulled out a letter one of many Grandma had left to be opened at specific times. This one had been marked First Thanksgiving After Truth. My dearest family, I read aloud. If you're reading this, then the poison has been exposed and expelled. I know the pain you've endured, the trust shattered, the questions raised. But look around you. See who remains. Those are your true family. Family isn't blood or law or habit. It's choice. Daily choice to show up, to be honest, to protect each other from predators, whether they share your DNA or not. You've learned the hardest lesson. That love without vigilance is dangerous, but vigilance without love is empty. Use what you've learned. Teach others. Build systems that prevent what happened to us. Turn our pain into others' protection. And remember, I loved you all, even Emma. Love doesn't mean enabling. Sometimes love means exposing truth no matter how painful. Forgive yourselves. You were human, therefore fallible. But you chose truth when it mattered. That's heroism, quiet but real. Now choose joy. Choose celebration. Choose each other. Every meal shared in honest love defeats those who would divide us for profit. All my love rose. Silence followed the reading, broken by quiet sniffles. Even after a year, Grandma's wisdom could still move us to tears. She knew we'd make it, Mom said softly. Even then she believed we'd survive. To Grandma Rose. I raised my glass again. And to chosen family. To chosen family, 24 voices echoed. The meal that followed was boisterous, filled with updates and plans. The foundation was expanding to 3 more states. Marcus had started dating someone he met in his support group. Jake's construction company had won a contract to upgrade security at local care facilities. Sarah was returning to school for social work inspired by our experience. Oh, Megan exclaimed suddenly. I forgot to tell you. That documentary filmmaker called again. Netflix is interested. We'd been approached about turning our story into a documentary. The decision wasn't easy. Privacy versus the opportunity to educate millions about elder abuse. What does everyone think? I asked. Grandma would want us to share, Aunt Patricia said thoughtfully, not for attention, but for prevention. Anonymize some details, Dr. Winters suggested. Focus on the patterns and warning signs rather than salacious details. I'll participate, Marcus said firmly. If one person recognizes their spouse's behavior in my story, it's worth it. We took a vote. Democracy in action, but informed by experience rather than manipulation. The decision was unanimous to proceed with careful controls and therapeutic support throughout filming. As afternoon stretched toward evening, people gravitated to different areas. The teenagers showed their elder abuse prevention presentation to interested adults. Marcus and his mother sat quietly in the garden, making up for lost years. The financial minds huddled over foundation expansion plans. I found myself in the kitchen, with Mom washing dishes in companionable silence. Through the window, Denver's skyline glittered in the setting sun. "Do you think she knew?" Mom asked suddenly. "Emma, do you think she knew what she was doing was evil?" I considered carefully. I think she knew it was wrong, but evil that requires acknowledgement of others' humanity. I don't think Emma could see past her own needs enough to recognize evil. "The Murphy curse," Mom murmured. "Broken now, Tab," I reminded her. "Tyler shows no signs. Neither do Jake's kids. We've turned the fortune to good works. It ends with Emma. And begins with this." Mom gestured toward the house full of family. "Honest connection. Transparent systems. Love with boundaries." The doorbell rang one more time. Linda the nurse stood outside still in scrubs from her holiday shift. "I know I said I couldn't make it," she apologized, "but my replacement came early. I couldn't miss this." "Your family," I said, simply meaning it. "Family shows up." As the evening wound down, people began departing with promises to meet at Monday's Foundation Board meeting. But before the last guest left, Stephanie called everyone back to the dining room. "We have something for you, Raquel." She produced a wrapped canvas. We all contributed. I unwrapped it to find a painted portrait, not just of me, but of our entire transformed family. At the center sat Grandma Rose, painted from her favorite photograph, surrounded by all of us. Even Emma was there, smaller and separated, but still included. At the bottom, in elegant script, "Family is choice." "Local artists did it from photos," Jake explained. "We wanted you to have something beautiful from this year, not just painful memories." Tears blurred my vision as I hugged each person. The family that had voted me out had become something stronger. A conscious community bound by shared values rather than mere genetics. As the last car pulled away, I stood in my doorway, looking at the warm lights of home. My phone buzzed with a notification from the Foundation's automated system. Another victim had received restitution funds. The Murphy fortune, drop by drop, was being transformed from instrument of exploitation to tool of justice. "We did it, Grandma," I whispered to the night sky. "We broke the curse." Inside, evidence of celebration remained. Empty plates that had held food made with love, photographs of genuine smiles, plans for a better future scattered across tables. This was wealth beyond money. Connection, purpose, truth. Next Thanksgiving would bring new challenges and victories. The documentary would air, possibly triggering more victims to come forward. The Foundation would expand, helping families recognize and prevent elder abuse. Emma might even show genuine remorse, though we'd learn not to expect miracles. But tonight, we'd proven something important. Families shattered by betrayal could rebuild stronger. Victims could become advocates. Inherited poison could be transformed into inherited purpose. And love, real love based on truth and boundaries and mutual respect, could triumph over even the most calculated evil. The portrait found its place above the fireplace, watching over a home built on honesty. 24 faces looked out, each marked by pain, but not defined by it. At the center, Grandma Rose smiled her knowing smile, her legacy of protection finally fully realized. This was our new Thanksgiving tradition, not hiding from hard truths, but celebrating our survival of them, not pretending perfection, but acknowledging growth, not blood bonds, but chosen connection. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, grateful exhaustion settled over me. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight we'd feasted on something more nourishing than turkey and pie. We'd shared truth, offered forgiveness, and chosen family. And that was the greatest Thanksgiving of all. Thank you for joining Raquel's family on their difficult but ultimately triumphant journey. Have you ever witnessed financial exploitation within families? What warning signs do you wish you'd recognized earlier? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone recognize a dangerous situation before it's too late. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more narratives about family resilience and justice. Share this with anyone who might benefit from learning these warning signs. Remember, family should be your safe harbor, not your greatest threat. Stay vigilant. Stay loving, and above all, stay true to what you know is right. Until next time, may your holidays be filled with honest love and genuine connection.